Okay. We have all our technology in place. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton. It's January 24th, 2022. We have the meeting statement first, please.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of
Sorry, Councilman Layton, your mic was making that noise there.
Oh, Leighton, you're on twice.
That's what it is, the feedback from the signals.
All right, there we go.
All right. Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Perron-Lambros,
Here.
Ms. Niedergang,
Here.
Mr. Cohen,
Here.
Ms. Fraga,
Here.
Ms. Sachs,
Here.
Mr. Newland. I see Mr. Newland.
Yeah.
Mayor Frida.
Here. Thank you. All right, first up on the agenda is we have 4 sets of minutes to approve. If someone would like to move, Leticia, can we move those in block? Thank you. Eve, seconds, okay? All right. Any questions, corrections, anything concerning the minutes? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the 4 sets of minutes, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. Eve, we have a proclamation.
We do. We have a proclamation. I have a brief introduction to the proclamation. So I'm really thrilled tonight to recognize the Friends of the Princeton Public Library, which was actually on the schedule to be recognized in March of 2020. And then something, I don't know, happened and we weren't able to do it then. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm really excited. I have a personal long-term involvement with the Friends of the Library, a volunteer for many, many years. So it's just very exciting for me to be doing this. After the reading of the proclamation, which all members, mayor and council will be doing, not together, but one after another, we'll hear from 3 friends who will share stories about their involvement with the Friends organization. And I just want to say that although this proclamation is not explicitly for our wonderful library staff, I do want to give a shout out to past Executive Director Leslie Berger, who is with us tonight and who worked so closely with the Friends and the community to develop this incredible institution and to keep it in the heart of our downtown. I also want to recognize the library's current Executive Director, Jennifer Podolsky, for steering our beloved library through the shoals of COVID and hopefully as we emerge from COVID and beyond. So I'll start with the proclamation. Whereas the Friends of the Public Library of Princeton was formed and incorporated as a charitable organization in Princeton, New Jersey in September 1961 and renamed the Friends of Princeton Public Library, commonly referred to as the Friends, in 1963. And whereas the Friends were formed to publicize the services offered by the library, to increase public support for the library, to address through friend raising the library's goal of serving the community, and to otherwise enhance the community's library. And whereas the Friends are dedicated volunteers who have worked tirelessly for the past 50 years to achieve these goals in collaboration with Princeton Township, Princeton Borough, and the municipality of Princeton. And
Whereas the Friends recognized that public funding could not keep pace with the community's growing demands on the library and the limitations of the municipal entity's tax appropriations, and accordingly added financial support of the library to its objectives to ensure the library became and remains the only library journal 5-star award library in the state of New Jersey. And Leticia, you're muted.
I knew somebody was going to do that, sorry. Whereas the Friends have contributed over the past 10 years alone, more than $1.5 million to the library to help pay for additional conventional and digital circulation materials, community outreach and staff development, and to help the Princeton Library become the award-winning institution that the Princeton community knows and loves. And whereas the Friends raise funds through the Friends Bookstore and book sales, hosting special author events, the much beloved trivia night events, community sponsorships and donations, and
Is it my turn? I don't,
Yes, David.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll pick you up, David. And whereas the Friends fundraising events such as its annual Fall Beyond Words, its annual Spring Brook Lovers Luncheon, and its signature evenings are recognized as community favorites, which bring high-profile authors to engage our community in conversation about literature and current events. And whereas one particular Beyond Words event highlighted a trio of speakers from the New York Magazine, David Remnick, Paul Muldoon, John McPhee, and featured food trucks from New York City and a huge tent on a closed down portion of Witherspoon Street, to the delight of and enjoyment of the guests and passersby. And
I'm stepping in for Councilwoman Sachs, who has a tooth issue. Whereas the Friends established the extremely successful and award-winning used bookstore within the Princeton Public Library, which resells more than 50,000 books a year that have been donated by community members, and which, even in the pandemic year of 2021, raised more than $100,000 to support the library through the good and hard work of the many Friends volunteers who sort, price, and sell used books. And whereas the Friends annual book sale is renowned among professional booksellers for having an impressive offering of unique and valuable books, which attracts some of the most acquisitive booksellers in the New York, New Jersey Metroplex area, resulting in annual sales averaging more than 20,000. And
whereas during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Friends continued to run the book sale, the bookstore, and to host fundraising events virtually and outdoors in person to continue to connect members of the Friends community with each other in order to cultivate curiosity and to fulfill their financial and personal commitment to support the library. And whereas the work of the Friends for 50 years has depended upon the dedicated and loyal work of thousands of volunteers to support the annual book sale and the Friends bookstore, to lead the work of the Friends by serving as members of the Friends Council, to plan and execute fundraising events such as Beyond Words, the Book Lovers Luncheon, and the Friends Evenings. And
whereas the Friends has helped build, both through financial contributions and dedicated volunteer efforts, the reputation of the Princeton Public Library and its well-earned title as the community's living room. And whereas the work of the Friends is an integral reason why our library is an exceptional center of learning and intellectual growth within our community, connecting community members with the thoughts, ideas, and intellectual contributions of others, tapping into the inquisitive and curious minds that bless our Princeton community as residents, academicians, authors, and community supporters. And
whereas the Friends of Princeton Public Library celebrated its 50th anniversary in September 2021, and whereas as of January 1st, 2022, the Friends merged with the Princeton Public Library Foundation, with the new entity now named the Friends and Foundation of the Princeton Public Library, and which continues the Friends' commitment to supporting the library. Now, therefore, Because of the Friends of the Library's commitment to the library and the Princeton community, we jointly, Princeton Mayor and Council, acknowledge their service to the town and their unconditional and demonstrated commitment to make Princeton a better place to live, work, and raise a family.
Furthermore, I, Mark Frieda, Mayor of the Municipality of Princeton, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, do hereby congratulate the Friends of the Princeton Public Library on the anniversary of 50 years of dedicated service, and furthermore, extend gratitude to the Friends for their commitment and contributions over those 50 years to enriching our library and enhancing our community. And do hereby call upon the residents to hail with boisterous cheering and sustained applause and proclaim January 24th, 2022 in the municipality of Princeton as Friends of Princeton Public Library Day.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from three Friends of the Library. I think we're starting with Marilyn. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you, Marilyn.
I started volunteering for the library back more than 15 years ago, working on the Student Film Festival with Susan Conlon, who is now head of youth services. I have a degree in film studies and was for 20 years on the film review show A Fistful of Popcorn on Princeton Community TV. Later in life, I went back to school and got an MLS from Rutgers, and my volunteering at the library expanded into working for the circulation department. Luckily, before my back and knees gave out, shelving children's books at toddler eye level, Sonia Vollenberg suggested I might enjoy working with the Friends and introduced me to Claire Bertrand. Soon Claire had me sorting through dusty boxes of books in the penthouse, hard on the back and also the sinuses, but easier on the knees. It's fun to open up a box of donated books to see what surprises might be inside. Last week, for instance, I unearthed Are You Hungry Tonight? Elvis's favorite recipes. There are several specialist sorters. Eric, who's going to be talking tonight also, does textbooks, others concentrated on history and politics, art, and children's books. I have been working on the old and unusual category, which can run the gamut from 18th century books to 1950s vintage children's books to artist books to signed copies. I research prices on the web. Most go into the store, but real rarities are saved for the annual sale, which has become a mecca for book dealers and collectors looking for bargains. This part of the sale raises lots of money for the Friends. Of course, none of this would be possible without the generous donations from the community. We are very, very grateful for the generosity of those supporters. Thank you.
Right. Janine Rosen, who is supposed to speak next, had a medical emergency with her aunt. And so her understudy, my wife, Wendy Mager, is going to read her remarks, so you don't have to listen to me twice.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be asked to speak about Janine's many wonderful years as part of the Friends and her work on behalf of the library. So now I'm going to transform into Janine and speak in the first person. About 22 years ago, I was looking for a volunteer opportunity in Princeton. I had always been drawn to libraries and reading from a young age and followed my heart into book publishing. Having left my job as a book editor in New York when we moved to Princeton, I missed the camaraderie of literary-minded people, and the Friends piqued my interest. Back then, to apply, you sent in a postcard, and Barbara Johnson called you to assess your worthiness. From then on, I was part of this diverse group of devoted volunteers, all looking for ways to add members, raise money for Princeton Public Library, and increase awareness of this valuable community resource. Friend-raising, we called it. We held benefits with auctions and celebrated speakers, organized author talks, and through our Books for Babies program, gave each baby born in the Princeton Hospital a board book to start them on their way. The Friends organized a series of bus excursions called Exploring with Friends Literary Bus Tours that were always sold out. and launched the Book Lovers Luncheons at Springdale, where the first speaker was Ruth Reichel. In 2010, I organized a Run for Your Library 5K, which began and ended at Heinz Plaza to kick off the celebration of the library's 100th birthday. Friends did depart and new faces joined, but it all was very simple, really. How to financially support the programs and promote the library's mission, which was to be, as former Friends President Claire Jacobus put so well, the community's living room. Having worn many hats with the Friends over the years, the role I am most proud of is being one of the founders of the gently used book sale that is now a lucrative fixture in the library lobby. It started with 3 shelves under the staircase and has grown to contribute at least $100,000 for the library each year, even last year during a pandemic. This thriving entity is a testament to all the volunteers sorting, pricing, and stocking the store 7 days a week. People who love books, who love a job well done, and most of all, who love our library. Count me among them.
Thank you, Janine. My story is similar to Janine's. I was a power user of the recorded books collection at the old Princeton Public Library. The wide selection entertained and educated me during my hour commute to Bell Laboratories in New Providence. I wanted to give back to the library and asked a friend, Harry Levine, how can I help? This was right around the year 2000, and Harry was immersed in the effort to get the new library funded and built. He put me in touch with Barbara Johnson, the president of the Friends. She thought with some guidance, I could be trained as a productive volunteer. I served on the board of the Friends for 16 years. I soon realized that you meet the best the community has to offer when you work with volunteers. With everyone pulling in the same direction, we can and did accomplish much and make the library a better place. Janine has listed a wide range of Friends and fundraising activities. The Friends have also been responsible, as was referenced, for planning and running the annual benefit. We have brought an incredible list of speakers on behalf of the library to the Nassau Presbyterian Church. They include Richard Ford, Terry Gross, Frank Rich, David Remnick, Robert Caro, Zadie Smith, Fran Leibowitz, Bill Bradley, John McPhee, Ross Chast, and Paul Muldoon, to name a few. It's quite an array of stars coming to Princeton to support the library. Following the talk, we would have cocktails, silent and live auctions, and wonderful dinners. We all want to get over the COVID hump so we can resume this tradition. During the pandemic, the flow of donated books never ceased, and the Friends volunteers keep sorting, pricing, and selling. Claire Bertrand has returned as the knowledgeable and hardworking manager of the book sale. 2022 looks to be a banner year as all the library patrons come out of quarantine and donate the books they've been keeping company with the last 2 years. So I want to thank the Princeton Municipal Council for recognizing the Friends and all of the dedicated volunteers. We love what we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric. Thank you, Marilyn. And thank you again to all the Friends in the audience and beyond.
Okay. All right, moving on. Public comments for items not on the agenda. The usual preamble, 3-minute limit per person. So if I interrupt you, I'm not trying to be impolite. I just need to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Eve?
Sorry, just based on, we talked about this, that someone said last week they didn't know how to make a comment. They didn't know how to get the attention.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you very much. So, okay, if you're out there and you do want to make a comment, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a raise hand function. So if you press the raise hand function, then we'll be able to recognize you. And I know I have at least one person that's having a problem with their raised hand function, and that's Joe Small, and Joe will get to you also. Okay, but Adam, can we bring in the first person with their hand up?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over JZA.
And again, everybody, as you come on, just say your name and address, and then you got your time. Thank you. Josh, is that you?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I don't know if you can. Okay. Hello, I'm Joshua Zinder. I live at 142 Moore Street, and I'm an architect in town. I have two questions that'll be quick. I want to know what the status was of the Witherspoon Street overlay. And the other question I had was I wanted to know what the status was of the Franklin Avenue project and bid. If anyone knows the answers to these. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Do we have someone, Mia?
Upcoming. I think that's about all we really could. I'll give you the same answer when you asked at planning board a few nights ago, Josh. I think the Witherspoon overlay, if it doesn't get done sooner, will be part of the master plan process. And the Franklin, obviously, there are some statutory requirements, and it's a top priority for council in 2022, and hopefully we'll be moving forward in the early part of this year. But there are some, right now, some underlying relationship issues that need to be addressed between the municipality, the Princeton Housing Authority, and the development partner, and that's what we're laying the foundation for now.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mia. Thanks, Josh. All right, Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Dale.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Dale Mead. I've owned and lived at 48 Oakland Street for the past 48 years. Tonight, I rise to express my grave concerns about the impact of the recent McMansion plus ADU combo construction in my immediate area near the Princeton Middle School. Many of you have seen the full-page article in the New York Times real estate section, December 12, 2021, that describes this issue. It describes a 0.19 acre lot at 234 Linden Lane where a 783 square foot single-story ranch costing less than $600,000 was demolished and replaced by a 2,300 square foot McMansion listed for sale at $1.295 million, and an ADU with 1,400 square feet listed for sale at $849,000. This is all compatible with the recently revised ADU ordinance of June 2020 and the revised ADU ordinance passed in August 2020. This is not increasing the capacity of affordable housing in Princeton. It's decreasing it. That is not what the advocates promised. The New York Times goes on to document the impact of the lawsuit by Marina Rubina Architect, and that has opened up a loophole in the Princeton ordinance for the main dwelling and ADU to have different owners, thereby increasing the profit motive for developers. In addition, the ADU was supposed to be limited to 800 square feet of living area. The Princeton construction ordinance has a huge loophole. Any space with a ceiling height less than 7 feet is unlimited. So the architect put in an extra 600 square feet of rooms at 6 feet 11 inches. But that's just the beginning of the avalanche. There's now another huge McMansion plus ADU being built at 35 Oakland Street. That's less than 500 feet from the other, and it's right across the street from me. You must drive by these to see for yourself. Again, that's 35 Oakland Street and 234 Linden Lane. The main building in this recent McMansion is at least 3 stories high and towers over the neighboring ranch. Its price is going to be in the range of at least $1.5 million with an ADU probably over $1 million. Again, this all complies with the existing Princeton ADU ordinance and construction ordinance. And this is, again, not increasing the availability of low and moderate income housing and granny suites that were promised by the advocates. These social goals are being subverted for developer profit. This isn't Princeton smart growth. It is Princeton greed growth, and it needs to be stopped. I don't believe this is what the council intended. It is certainly not what neighborhood property owners expected. I urge the council members to drive by 234 Linden and 35 Oakland soon and see these for yourself. In this case, a picture is worth a million words. I would request a comment from each member at the next council meeting on whether this is the type of a construction that they have endorsed when they were approving the ordinance
Dale.
last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Okay. Mia, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Dale. We are aware of this. And I want to say that in more than 18 months since the ADU ordinance was passed, there is only this one example of an abuse. And I would say that it was technically legal, but we're aware of the fact that there was the attic provision loophole that was utilized. Just want to note that it's not just with ADUs that this provision has been used in a way that is not ideal. And we are working to close that as soon as possible, not only for ADUs, but for other structures. I don't know if the Oakland, I just wanted to ask our staff, Derek, has the one on Oakland been approved yet? And is that an ADU?
Yes, it has been approved. There's a renovation of the existing house. It's basically a new house, and then a new ADU that's
okay.
Reads as 3 stories, but
okay. So we are aware that these are definitely not in keeping with the spirit of what we are trying to accomplish, and we are working to close that loophole. But thank you for coming to
Well, thanks for your response. The house across the street from me, it is up. It is standing there.
Yes.
3 stories high. Please drive by and look at it. It's astounding.
Yep. Dale, thank you. Mia, thank you for the reply.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay. Adam, could you bring in the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Linda.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Linda. Just give us your
Hi.
name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, Linda Famey. I'm the manager of 255 Nassau Street, the residents at Carnaval Valley Plaza. So I'm calling, I spoke and met with, by Zoom, Michelle, Friday with a number of other business owners and committee folks. I know we're not supposed to talk about the upcoming ordinance that's coming up. What I'm calling to talk about is my concern about what feels like a lack of transparency to myself and the many other businesses I've spoken with that had no clue about this SID brewing. And to this afternoon at 4:30, I received a copy of the ordinance and sent it out to everyone. And, I know this has been brewing for some time from back in the end of the year. I know that committee folks that are typically involved in the local CDC, Central Business District are, were invited by, the mayor, I guess, Mark Frieda, to participate along with a current resident and nonprofit. And what came out of that, I also just got a copy of the report. And I sent it out to everyone, again, that I had spoken with, the other property owners in town, a lot of them on East Nassau Street, and none of them have received, other than a very, information light communication that there was this economic development group working and there would be additional information that would be forthcoming. The bottom line is I have learned, for example, that our property will be assessed close to $3,000 and it's not being called a tax, but it is mandatory and it is tied to our taxes. I feel we did the meeting for the public comment was scheduled for Valentine's Day, which was February 14th, which I'm so pleased that it was pushed back to the 28th. What concerns me is reading the ordinance that the first time that a lot of these businesses in town will learn about the details and this mandatory fee that they will be assessed is 10 days before the public comment. And when I spoke with Michelle, my understanding is that this has really been decided by the committee, that this is going forward. There's no input that the business community can have at this time about an assessment that they're going to be mandated. Now, this on the heels of COVID, where most businesses, aren't looking for facade fronts or marketing, or that they're looking to keep their business doors open and paying their payrolls. The fact that most of these businesses that I have been in, once I realized this, I've been doing a significant reach out, and I'm astounded about how many people are not aware. So my question is, whether it be the 28th, prior to the 28th, that we can get a group, and that not only will this information go out to every business, but the actual assessment, 3% to all Nassau Street business property owners, and so forth, the different district ratios, so that they'll get a very clear understanding of what's being proposed, what's being offered, and what the mandatory, not optional, like the Princeton Merchants Association, this will be mandatory, will be assessed and burdened to businesses who are already struggling to keep their doors open and their payrolls paid.
Sure. Linda, can we?
I'm not saying that this is necessarily bad idea. I said that the bottom line is that the communication has to occur and the business owners have to have a voice.
Yes, yeah, totally agree, Linda. So I think Michelle's going to make a comment or two, and then we'll just make sure that you understand the process and how everybody will be advised of what's going on. Michelle?
I won't take too much time. And Linda, I heard, and I'm concerned about your concerns, and I will address some of that when we do the introduction of the ordinance. But I can assure you that the steering committee is reaching out and talking with people directly. It kind of cuts to one of the main problems is we have no email database. We have no good mechanism for communicating with the business community. So it strikes a chord of being something that we have really, we know, and I'll speak more to it, we know that this is something that we're really missing in our community. So I appreciate you getting the word out. We can talk more about how this will work, but you will have the opportunity to speak at the public hearing. There will be a notice to all business members, as was a notice to the stakeholder meetings back in September. And once this is formed, then the idea would be then it goes to another public hearing for the budget. And I really encourage you and anyone who wants to be involved. There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done by volunteers. So thank you for bringing this up. And, thank you for reaching out on Friday. We had a good beginning of discussions, and we'll continue to do so. And I'll address some of the other things in terms of process when I speak at introduction.
Right, but I think, Michelle, one important point is that 10 days prior to the public hearing, the ordinance and all the details around that will be sent to every property that's impacted by this ordinance.
It's actually will be 3 weeks, and now with it pushing back to the 28th, we have now that the ordinance is complete, we're going to print the ordinance out, and we're going to send it with the attachment to everybody. So there'll be a letter, there'll be the ordinance, and there'll be the notice of public hearing to all the properties that are in the assessment region.
Yeah, thank you. And I just thought that was a critical point to make.
Yeah, thanks.
Real clear. That's all.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Linda, thank you. And Linda, I just want to say to you and anyone else, it's always important that people join the meeting when we have the public hearing, because that is the official record, and that's where the decisions are made on an ordinance to accept it or reject it. So it's very important that yourself and anyone else that you have contacted that wants to speak, the public hearing is the best place to do it, because what you say tonight, we all hear you, that's fine, but it's not part of the record, and there's no decision being made tonight. So thank you. Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Yes, next speaker is Joe Tex.
Hi, I'm Joe Small. I live on Hawthorne Avenue. I'd like to also talk about the SID. In the proposed ordinance that I saw, the District Management Committee is to be a corporation called something like Princeton Business Partners Incorporated. There's no detail on what that corporation is, how it's going to be appointed, who the members are. I think that's essential because they're the people that are going to be running it. They're the people who are going to be making decisions on how the money is spent, on who's to be employed, who's going to get the contracts, and that's very important. Also, I'm glad that Councilwoman Perrone has indicated that notice will be going out to each of the people who will be affected by it. There's a 13-page addendum to the ordinance, so you have a list of everybody. You know who they are. If the tax assessor and collector can find them, so can the council. It seems that in the report that has been prepared for council, they've already made decisions about what the taxes should be, and the taxes are variable from people from district to district. That should be a decision that's made by the appointed committee, not by some preliminary group. So I think there's a lot of information that needs to be provided to the citizenry, and especially to the people who will be taxed, including some doctors and dentists. If you look at the 13 pages, and they should have an opportunity to know what their liability will be, who's going to decide on how to spend the money. And without that kind of information, I don't think council can make an informed decision on the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And again, to everybody, all those details, questions like that, and replies to that will all be part of the public hearing. So anyway, but moving on. Adam, can we bring in the next member of the public, please?
Yes, next speaker is Alice.
Hello, this is Alice Arzt. I'm in Hawthorne Avenue, Princeton. To add to what Dale said earlier, I have just this afternoon, I just drove around looking at the various monstrosities with the ADUs being built now in Princeton. And I'm delighted that Mia has now assured me that the council will be working to change the rules to make this less likely to happen in the future. But for sure, we need a dedicated group of residents who have no monetary or professional or business axe to grind to oversee that these huge eyesores do not continue to be built with or without ADUs. Oversight is desperately needed. So though this infringes on the next something that's going to be dealt with later, but probably rules and timetables for SPRAD need to be changed. But certainly the last thing I think we need is to allow developers to do whatever they like with no control or oversight. That needs to be oversight. That really needs to be. This is not Princeton anymore. This is turning into a real problem, very serious problem.
Thank you, Alice. We appreciate you calling in. Okay, Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Michael.
Okay.
Quick question related to ADUs for David.
And Michael, I'm
yeah.
sorry. Could you just state your name and address so we have it for the minutes?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Michael Floyd, Harris Road. Question for David. And David and I did exchange emails in early December. And you did explain a little bit of your thoughts on this, but you didn't give me a timetable on the report. I guess a year and a half. You know, you said at some time, I expected now or so. That's why I emailed you in December that you would produce a report on ADUs and how they were going. I think on my email, I copied Dwayne. I realized he was leaving, but he was the 51%, 49%. And I know Councilwoman Niedergang also had her pledge that will sort of track ADUs. So do you know when you'll get to sort of work on this?
I don't have a good answer, but I think I'll target to get it done within a month and a half.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mike. Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Nina, or rather, Yina.
Jaina.
Apologies.
It's all right. Between you and I, we'll get half of them right.
Thank you. My name is Yaina Moore. I live at 19 Green Street. I want to concur with Dale Mead's comments with regard to ADUs and as well as Alice's, and both of their observations of the resulting development opportunity that it has actually created for the developers. And of course, I was one of the naysayers 2 years ago when the changes and the revisions to the original ordinances that were then created to come up with an ADU, and then the ADU and all of the either restrictions or the provisions that allowed for greater development and less affordability. I hate to say that it's and I told you so, but it is. Witherspoon Jackson Development Corporation met with 3 counselors about 16 months ago on this very issue before the, I guess, ordinance was filed and recorded. And at the time, those counselors, Dwayne Williamson being one, so he's off the hook, committed then to really work to ensure that at least, given that there seemed to have been an acceptance on for some, that this was going to be a great thing. For those of us in the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood who questioned its, that there would be some actions or at least some recommendations made to for this neighborhood to weather that storm. There were many different scenarios, cities all over the country, particularly Denver being one, where there were some programs to ameliorate negative impacts to neighborhoods that already in the marketplace had a level of affordability, but could be really developed to an unaffordable state, which was certainly the example of the 73 Lee Avenue, as it turned out. The 18 months that it's taken to build a house, I mean, really, that was pretty fast. It's not that only 2 were done, it's the others are getting started, but that one must have started right out the gate, or those 2. And of course, there was one ongoing. I'm sure they're all being filed in their minds and created to avoid and to skirt, the requirements, including that height limitation in terms of qualifiable square footage, many different ways. But I think the likely impacts were obvious, and that's really a problem. So, David, if it's going to take a month and a half, great. It's time to get working on that. It's long past due. I wasn't at the beginning of the meeting, but I had concerns about the SPRAB ordinance. Am I permitted to talk about that?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
why don't we get to the, well, in all fairness, let me get to the other people and let me just see
Had
here.
an item on the agenda, Mark?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just going to the agenda.
Well,
I'm
that's what I
looking
wanted
down
to
right
know.
now at the agenda. So this is for
Right.
item not on the agenda, Yaina, so let's hold that till we get there.
Okay, so we're going to have a public comment period at the end of that. Okay, great.
Yeah, because tonight's the public hearing on the SPRAB ordinance, so that's the whole
Right.
idea.
Okay, all right, good.
Thank you. All right, Adam, can we bring in the next person, please? Is there another person or was that everybody?
Oh, there is one
there
more,
we go.
Mayor.
Yep, another hand popped up. Yep, thank you.
We have Frank.
Can all hear me, I guess, at this point?
Yeah, Frank, if you just state your name and address, that'd be great.
This is Frank Arminante. I own a couple of buildings on Witherspoon Street, and I've been a member of the steering committee for approximately a year or more. And I've gone through the entire process with them, the economic development of it, the SID, et cetera. And I'd like to compliment the mayor and the Councilwoman Perone on describing tonight that this will be determined over the next few meetings as to exactly giving the amount of cost involved on somewhat of a detailed basis and an analysis of types of benefits for each particular district of the nine particular districts we have. And I think that would really bring the attention to the people that there's really in holding back nothing. We have nothing to hide, and that we will, this will all come out within the next few meetings we have. That's all I have to say.
Frank, thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay. Adam, I don't think I see any other hands up, right?
Yes, Mayor, that's everybody.
In the steering committee.
Okay, so we'll move on from the public comment for items not on the agenda. Next on the agenda are announcements and reports. So why don't we start with the council members first? David?
Yeah, just a really quick announcement. On Thursday evening this week, the 27th, there's going to be a stakeholder meeting to talk about the redevelopment stormwater ordinance, which was, I guess, introduced several months ago and then tabled. I just checked the municipal calendar. It is not up on the calendar yet, but I know that it will be shortly. It will be open to the public. So anybody who's interested in that issue of stormwater management on properties that are already developed but are being redeveloped, please feel free to come to the meeting.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get that up on the website. Even then, Leticia?
Leticia, I beat you by a split second. So a couple of things from the senior center, just want to alert everybody that PSRC is extending its in-person pause another 3 weeks. So all programs will continue to be virtual, and they hope to reopen to in-person programs on February 22nd. I wanted to thank our infrastructure and operations department, especially Deanna Stockton, the clerk's office and Access Princeton for getting the landscaper registration form in English and Spanish up on the website. That's one part of the landscaper and equipment ordinance that we passed back in October. We have temporary enforcement in place. Our arborist, Taylor Sapruder, is doing double duty. So I thank him for that. And we've advertised for a permanent compliance officer to take over the responsibility for enforcing the noise restrictions on the gas leaf blowers. And just FYI, our attorney has determined that a light dusting of snow does not constitute an emergency and does not entitle someone to use their gas leaf blower to dust off the sidewalk. So just a heads up on that. And finally, even though we already talked about the library, I did want to highlight that the library was the only library in New Jersey to receive the 5-star library award from the Library Journal. And it's only a handful nationwide. And this is the 5th year in a row that the library has received that. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eve. Leticia?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the our health department, I'm pleased to announce that they have partnered up with Richwood Diagnostic Center to open up a new COVID testing center, which is located at 237 North Harrison Street, which is the old Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad building. The testing center actually opened today, and it's going to be operating Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. To 3 p.m. The center will accept walk-ins, but but appointments are strongly encouraged. And the appointments can be made by going to on the testnj.online website. There is no out-of-pocket cost to participants, and masks are required when visiting the testing center. Participants should bring photo ID, and those who do have insurance should also bring their insurance card. And then just a brief announcement regarding permit parking task force. We have tentatively reserved March 1st as the date for continuing our discussion on permit parking. And there'll be more information on that as that date is confirmed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Leticia. And just to be clear to people listening in, you're saying March 1st at a council meeting, correct?
Yes, it was actually one of the dates that we have identified as a special council meeting. Yep. And again, that's on that Tuesday, March 1st, 7 p.m.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make it clear to everybody that it's a full council meeting and not just a task force meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Other council members have anything at this time? Announcements or reports? Mia.
I just want to remind everyone that tomorrow is the day in which, if you are interested in weighing in either in a yay or nay on the school referendum, the facilities referendum, tomorrow is the day. So,
thank you. Leighton.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to report that I have had my initial meetings as liaison with Affordable Housing, Historic Preservation Commission, Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance, and Princeton Housing Authority. In the upcoming meetings, I'm sure I'll have reports to share with the public and my colleagues.
Thank you, Leighton. Way to jump in and get right to it. Okay, seeing no other reports from council members at this time, let's go to the police chief. I know he's waiting patiently so he can give his monthly report.
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing this evening?
Good to see you.
Good to see everyone as well. Just a few items this month that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention about the police department. First is the recent COVID impact that we felt within the police department. So obviously, COVID has had a tremendous impact on everyone, and it's no different for the police department as well. So we noticed back during the holiday that we were at the end of December starting to see an uptick in people becoming sick, and we monitored it. And from the beginning of the year to now, we have had 8 police officers test positive, and 3 additional that were symptomatic but tested negative. So thankfully, everyone recovered well and is doing fine, and most are back to work now. But obviously, and for a police department, it created a lot of concerns with staffing issues because we have certain minimums that we need to maintain. So just so you know, we did make some adjustments internally with how we filled some of our staffing levels. We also made some adjustments to our daily operations. We instituted, even before the town did, a mask mandate for our police officers in public spaces, just as added protection for everyone. Obviously, everyone is equipped with a mask that's provided through the police department, and we require everyone to wipe down their workstation every day, as well as the police cars get disinfected before and after every shift. So we think we're in a much better place. We do have some contingency plans if needed, if it were continue to progress in the police department, but we think we're in a good place now. But it's obviously something that we'll continue to monitor and make additional adjustments as needed. Our 3 officers, our new officers, have started. You've seen some of that in our weekly reports that we've been providing. The 2 that are already PTC certified, meaning that they've been through the police academy, are starting their FTO program this week, their field training officer program. So they'll be assigned with an experienced officer, and they'll go through a minimum of a 3-month training program, riding in a car with another officer. And then once that's completed, they'll remain on a probationary status for the remainder of the year. The one officer in February, he'll be attending the Mercer County Police Academy. So we're making preparations for his attendance there. And lastly, we submitted all of our end of year reporting. There's a significant amount of reporting that a police department needs to do through AG guidelines to the Mercer County Prosecutor's Office. So all that data has been collected, submitted to the county for their review. We're working on our internal end of year report, and we will provide that in a subsequent council meeting once that's completed. And this November report we'll have posted tomorrow on our website. And actually, we just finished the December report, so I'll probably post that tomorrow as well, just to not to get too far behind with some of our with our reporting. It's just the way the reports, by the time they get completed, and the timing of the council meetings. And if there's anything in the report or any questions you have, feel free to, again, reach out to me at any time. Thank you,
Mayor. Chief. Any council questions at this point? Leticia.
Yes, first I want to say thank you, Chief, and to ask you to please relay our congratulations and welcome to the 3 new officers. I look forward to the opportunity to meet them in person, hopefully one day soon. And then just a question, just something I noted in the most recent report, and I think I don't know if it was in previous reports as well. I noticed that there were the usual reports involving contacts with juveniles. And I was wondering if it's because there hasn't been any in that report, which would be a good thing, or if it's just something that is not included anymore.
No, it's something that we would continue to include, depending on what the information is, because obviously with juveniles, there's a lot of protections.
Correct. Yes.
But yeah, with the data, then it would have been limited for that month.
Oh, okay. No, and then like I said, if it was not included because there wasn't anything significant, then that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eve.
Hey, Chief, thank you for the report and for all the good work the police department does. We also had our traffic safety report today, so I'm hoping you can make a little bit of a public statement as going through the police report, and again talking to Sergeant Murray this morning. There's a tremendous amount of unsafe driving out there, especially I noticed, to my really horror, that the number of incidents at school crossings is way up. And, I think the safety of the community's children is everybody's first concern. I wonder if you could just say a few words about, people just taking the more authoritative when you say it, that people taking the time to get where they're going and, just being really mindful. We've seen these numbers climb up. So,
yeah, absolutely. You're right, Even. It's been a concern in the police department for quite some time now. Traffic and poor driving has always been an issue in town. It's actually, I would say, it's been our biggest complaint for years. A lot of the issue is sheer volume, but we are seeing an uptick. What we see with distracted driving. So. It's putting the phone down. It's paying attention to obviously just driving itself. And then that's why we started that limited campaign. So that's also something that we put into our strategic plan to try to promote that a little bit more to get the word out. Enforcement is a big part of it, but as much of that, there has to be public education. That's where we try to use our variable message boards as well. But again, it is a concern in the police department, and we have various ways that we try to address it outside of just making motor vehicle stops, and that's through education, variable message boards, decoy vehicles as such, and through traffic safety, and even through our Safe Neighborhood Bureau that spends some time in the school talking to students as well, newer drivers, about the importance of driving safe and especially putting the cell phone down. That seems to be the biggest one that we see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for the chief? Okay. Chief, thanks again. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mayor. You too. Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay. Bernie, do you have anything else staff related under announcements, reports?
I don't, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the public hearings. The first public hearing is on ordinance 2022-01. An ordinance by the municipality of Princeton disbanding the site plan review advisory board and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and code of the Township, New Jersey, code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey. Sorry, there's a word missing there. 1968 accordingly. Can we have a motion so we can open discussion on that? Michelle, thanks. Is there a second? Leighton, thank you. Okay. Council questions, comments, etc. David?
All right. I'm going to share my thoughts. After there's been a lot of discussion about this over the last week with the planning board, and I've heard from a lot of members of the public, and tried to organize my thoughts about where things stand right now. So I'll just go ahead and dive in. First of all, I want to talk about areas of agreement because I think I and the members of the planning board are all quite strongly in agreement with certain of the goals that staff has in bringing this ordinance to us. So we all agree that there are certain powers that have been designated to SPRAB which are inconsistent with municipal land use law, such as classification of site plan applications into major and minor categories, final review of certain signage applications. So those things need to be corrected, and they are corrected in tonight's ordinance. We also agree that we need to eliminate conflicts of interest for members serving on SPRAB. And by the way, not just for members serving on SPRAB, but I think we also have this as an issue with all of our BCCs, that they really should be held to the same standard as members of council or members of the planning and zoning board, that they shouldn't be representing clients before other agencies, the municipality, at the same time that they're serving on these boards. So I think that needs to be corrected. We all agree that we need to reduce the burden on staff. There's a lot of work involved with attending the SPRAB meetings and following up with minutes and helping to draft the resolutions. I think that that's appreciated and needs to change. I think it's a good idea. We think it's a good idea to reduce the burden on applicants. Right now, SPRAB review feels a little bit like a dress rehearsal for the planning board hearing. Applicants are bringing large numbers of their professionals to the meetings to help to present the reviews. It's very costly and really not necessary. And then I think everybody agrees that it would be good to have design review happen earlier in the process than it currently does. But I do want to re-emphasize the value of SPRAB that I have seen in my 8 or so years on the planning board. The SPRAB reports tend to be really excellent with concrete and practical suggestions for how applications can be improved, things which very rarely appear in the staff reports. Staff reports are excellent as well, but while I've heard a criticism that SPRAB is duplicative, In my experience, the SPRAB reports are actually quite separate, with rare instances where the same recommendations are being made as in the staff reports. I think it's really useful to have a group of designers, professional designers, weighing in on design issues. Design issues by their nature are somewhat subjective. They are not completely subjective, but they are somewhat subjective. And when you have a group of professionals weighing in, having the whole group agree on specific observations or recommendations really confers a level of confidence that those recommendations are solid, and that you don't get if you have a single designer making recommendations. It's too easy to dismiss the opinions of a single designer as just one person's opinion. And I will say that another criticism we've heard is that SPRAB recommendations occasionally conflict with staff recommendations. But honestly, when that happens, I don't consider that to be a bad thing. Often there are different values that are in tension in coming up with a design, where there may be certain things that would push the design in one direction and other values that would push it in a different direction. And it's good to identify those conflicting values. And it's the job of a designer, of the applicant and their designer, to try to come up with creative solutions that address both sets of concerns, which may initially appear to be conflicting. So I think that really is just part of the design process, and it's not a negative. A lot of changes can be made to the way SPRAB operates without any action by council. Certain things like whether staff has to come and participate in the SPRAB hearings, that isn't in the ordinance anywhere. It's just, and in fact, in previous years, there has been no staff involvement in the SPRAB hearings. The enabling ordinance does not make any reference to a staff liaison. There's nothing in the ordinance that requires applicants to attend the meetings. If it's considered a burden, they can simply submit their drawings, and SPRAB can review the design without the applicant being present. And I think we can also move the SPRAB review to be earlier in the process without having to make any change to the ordinance. So bottom line is, it's my strong personal preference not to pass this ordinance tonight. We heard a lot when this was reviewed by the planning board about the dangers of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, and that it's a mistake to get rid of a useful organization, a useful body like this without knowing what you're going to replace it with. We have a lot of development going on in town right now, a lot of applications that are going to be coming through the planning office. And, if we dissolve SPRAB now, we may have 12 to 18 months before we can put in place a successor entity, and just a whole bunch of applications that will not benefit from the very useful review that SPRAB performs. There have been observations that SPRAB is not legitimately authorized to make the kinds of, or perform the kind of design review that it does under section 10B-226 of the land use ordinance. But in fact, that same section, a little bit later in a subsection, enumerates a large number of design criteria that SPRAB is authorized to comment on and review applications in light of. And so, I'm cognizant of the fact that this section 226 is somewhat self-contradictory in that a portion of it sort of says that the planning board, historic preservation, and SPRAB should not be looking at design. But when you have an ordinance that's in conflict with itself, there are a couple of things you can do. And one is to fix that ordinance rather than abolishing SPRAB to try and eliminate the conflict. So I know I've gone on for quite a while. I'm glad I'm not a member of the public, limited to 3 minutes. Thank you for listening, and I'll be interested to hear the rest of the discussion.
Thanks, David. Other council comments or questions? Michelle.
Well, we're really taking a lot of the input from our staff and from our attorney. So I'd like to hear from them, too, before I further comment. And I appreciate David's input, but I do think that there's a better way to go about doing this. And I'd like to hear from staff and from our attorney. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. We'll get to them in just a minute. Just see if there's any other council comments before we go there. Mia.
And I just want to say that I agree with David in many respects. We need a SPRAB that is in the beginning. We need a review body, which is a second set of eyes of local citizens who are able to view things through the lens of, how we view things as a community. We need something in the process. We need something which is not so labor intensive for staff. And I also spent a lot of time this weekend talking to local residents and hearing how amazing SPRAB was in its heyday. And I do hope that we can get back to that. It does sound like it headed off some really unfortunate projects and was part of contributing to some of the amazing things that we have now. But I think there was a unanimous vote of the planning board that it would be the fastest way to get there would be to disband and then put in place what we want. And that is where David and I disagree, because I think that I'm not an attorney, but having heard both the municipal attorney and the planning board attorney and staff all weigh in unanimously that the way the ordinance is written now and the way that SPRAB has been acting the issues related to conflict of interest, that trying to untangle all that is more time consuming than removing and replacing. And I just give the analogy of a car, which sometimes you reach a point where it doesn't make sense to replace the entire internal operating system, but rather to get a new car, which is an upgrade. So, which hopefully retains the features that you like in your old car. But anyway, I think it's a matter of, I think everyone wants to end up in the same place with the type of body that David described. It's just a matter of which is the faster way to get there. And I feel that I am, after today's discussion and after basically spending most of my weekend listening to community members and people who've formerly been on SPRAB, I feel like I have to list. I'm going to go with what our attorneys and staff advise, that what was voted on unanimously by the planning board is the faster route to get to an optimally functioning body that will be that second set of eyes and the gatekeeper that we very much want.
Thank you. Eve, I think you were next.
I was just going to say I'd also like to hear from our planner and attorney, but I would like an opportunity to comment later on.
Okay, not a problem. Anyone, Leticia?
Yeah, I will just add to that. I mean, I truly value our staff recommendations, but also my colleagues. I don't have the benefit of my colleagues, Councilwoman Sachs and Councilman Cohen that serve on the planning board to have had been part of the conversations. And, I'm still up to today, still hearing from the public and also, additional memos from staff that I really feel that I need more in order to make an informed decision. So I do look forward to tonight's public hearing I'm just not sure that I'm there yet to feel comfortable that I have enough to make an informed decision. But thank you.
Yep, Leighton.
You're
Leighton,
muted, Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Letitia, I feel like I'm in the same position. First, let me say that it took time for me to do some research, which I'm still doing, but to hear the heartfelt testimony of Mr. Bill Wolf at our last meeting, his passion, his compassion, and his commitment over the 20 or 25 years he served as chair SPRAB was enlightening, and really I heard him loud and clear, and I heard the public loud and clear, and it's obvious, very obvious to me, that the work that SPRAB does has a great deal of value and is well respected by the constituents here in Princeton. At the same time, following up on research, I took a look at the credentials of our very talented and professional staff in the areas of planning, zoning, construction, HPC. They are all very good at what they do. With regard to our attorneys, I think in a way, as we have been guided by science with regard to the pandemic, we must be also guided by our attorneys who are our legal minds. And it's clear that as presently constituted, SPRAB has no standing with regard to state statute. And through no fault of its own, it quite frankly is exercising authority that it just does not have. That is clear from the attorneys. And what that does, it puts the municipality at risk. That is a problem. We also sometimes, I think, ask SPRAB to make major decisions without having a lot of guidelines and parameters and questionable authority. So I agree with David. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think the right thing to do, and I want to hear more from our attorneys and planners, is to take a look at an entity that does and serves the exact same purpose that SPRAB does, but it does so in a way that does not clog the process or slow down progress. That's where I'm at right now. But again, I do want to hear from the professionals at every level, and then make a determination as to what the best way is to go forward.
Okay, I think we've heard from everybody on council now, so we'll jump to staff and our attorney. Trishka, maybe you could jump on first and just help us understand this section that David referred to, 10B-226, about what limits are there for SPRAB, and then, as David alluded, I guess there's other things in there that they are allowed to do, but if you could help us.
Sure. And before I do that, I just do want to back up a little bit and hopefully provide some broader context for the council, because I do appreciate the struggle that all of the council members are facing. And it is definitely the council's decision ultimately, but one thing that I do want to note with respect to the planning board's recommendation is that by ordinance, SPRAB's purpose is to advise the planning board on development applications. As I said, it's ultimately the council's decision. However, given that the core function of SPRAB is to advise the planning board, I do think that you should be very mindful of that as you decide how much weight to give to the planning board's own unanimous recommendation to this body with respect to SPRAB. In terms of some of the inconsistencies between SPRAB's functions and the municipal land use law, I think they've already, David, I believe in particular, already highlighted some of the ones that I've been calling out, namely the classification of site plans, the ability to actually make decisions on certain types of applications that would clearly have to be resolved promptly no matter what. But also just with respect more broadly to the design review functions that SPRAB performs, yes, there's the language of 10B-226. I may actually defer to staff to really get into that one because they're the ones who work with these land use regulations on a daily basis. I don't. However, what I do work with is case law, and even beyond just what's in your own code, any body that's going to perform design review functions, whether it's SPRAB or anybody else, that there have to be codified objective standards. And that is also something that the council has heard me, say before whenever we've discussed this, and the cases are clear on that. And so whether it's SPRAB in its current form, whether it's a new entity, whatever body is established to perform a design review function, there must be some codified objective standards in place to guide that review, or no matter what you do, it's always going to be legally suspect. So those are my general comments. I do want to give Michael and Jim and Derek, who work with the ins and outs of our land use regulations and really know the details, I want to give them a chance to weigh in.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to go next, please?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just a few words, and then I was going to read the brief findings of the planning board meeting that was this afternoon, so everybody can be caught up on that. From a staff perspective, this has been a somewhat frustrating experience in that what we all were unanimously in favor of was improving site review for Princeton, trying to make it better, and also to have it conform to certainly the municipal land use law, but statute, laws in general, rules, regulations in general. And somehow in the community, some people seem to take that as a de-emphasizing of site plan, or that design review is not important to staff. Well, that couldn't be further from how we feel. We're actually one bright spot, one silver lining of all this has been that everyone's talking about site plan review and design review. That's a good thing. So I think we should follow up and put in place SPRAB point 2, either the next SPRAB, whatever we come up with, which will be even better and won't have any legal problems and any no more legal inconsistencies or any conflicts of interest. I think it's just a better way forward. Having said that, I'll just read briefly what the planning board's action was this afternoon. At a special meeting this afternoon, the Princeton Planning Board continued its review of draft ordinance 2022-01, which calls for the abolishment of SPRAB. After receiving legal opinions from its counsel on questions raised at the January 20th meeting of the board, the planning board conducted a lengthy discussion that included public comment and input by staff. The planning board stated its appreciation for the design review conducted by SPRAB. However, it was the consensus of the board that any and all legal or ethical issues associated with SPRAB in its current form must be addressed immediately, and supports council's intent to do so. Therefore, on motion by Vice Chair Quinn, seconded by Ms. Capozzoli, the planning board voted unanimously to endorse ordinance 2022-01 to disband SPRAB in its current configuration. The motion also called for council to direct the planning board to develop a new site plan review advisory board proposal in a timely manner. And finally, the planning board views this approach as the most efficient way to address problems related to jurisdiction, potential conflicts, and other concerns expressed by staff, while ensuring that the valuable review functions previously provided by SPRAB are not lost. The planning board welcomes the opportunity to work with its council and land use staff to develop a new version of a site plan review advisory board for Princeton.
Thank you, Michael. Jim, are you next?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I really don't think I have much to add. You have a very detailed memo from me that was delivered on Friday. And the planning board in their deliberations today also had that memo and discussed it at length. I prepared it, but it was in agreement with all of staff, Michael, Derek Bridger, our zoning officer, and our senior planner, Justin Lesko, all signed off on that memo. So there's really nothing else to add, but I'm here as well as Michael and Derek to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Derek, do you have comments to add at this point?
No, I pretty much echo Jim's statements. I think the facts as we see them are out there, and if you have any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just see if Deanna had any comments, and then I'll jump back to council people. Deanna, I don't know if you had anything to add at this point.
No, I'll defer to staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eve.
Thanks. I just have, thank you very much, Trishka, Michael, Derek, Jim. I just have a quick question for Michael. He disappeared, but you don't have to come back on. You can just answer. There was, Michael, hi. You
I was
said
just lurking in the shadows.
It's so hard on Zoom to keep your eye on somebody because they come off camera and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, where did they go? Sorry. You said you use the expression in a timely manner. Could we hear just a little bit more about what our definition of timely and other people's definition of timely may not kind of fall in the same place? Can you talk just a couple of minutes about what the process would be and when you would expect to have a new entity in place, ideally?
Yeah, well, this is fresh in my mind because we were literally talking about it about 2 hours ago. So the planning board, there was consensus. The planning board wanted to get working on this right away. So I think you would see something this spring, hopefully, at least a proposal. We talked about how it's going to take a little while because staff has to develop some ideas and a format for what this new entity would be, has to bring it to the planning board and work with the planning board a little bit before it could, go to council. So it's seen as an urgent, if planning board was given this task, it seemed like it would be a high priority for the board. That was the officers and all the members felt that way.
And sorry, not quite done. The design criteria, that would be part of that, or that would come later? Because I'm hearing from David and Mia, and from also the planning board and your memo, I believe, and others, is that is really a key desire by all involved, is to have a set of design criteria.
Right.
And would that be part of this process, or would that come later? And can you give a timeline on that as well?
Well, I think realistically, because design guidelines, that's a project that takes a lot of time. You really have to have a lot of discussion with the community, and everyone needs to sort of build a shared vision. And then the design guidelines are what forms that vision as far as how we want Princeton to evolve. I know that we were going to work on that in the master plan, which is starting very soon. So I'm thinking this work could happen concurrently. We could be working on this new entity that will be follow SPRAB's work. At the same time, we could be thinking about our work on design guidelines.
And Nate, sorry, well, I think this is my last question. And so the new entity could come online to function doing a lot of what SPRAB did, with the design guidelines to be like, if that's SPRAB 0.2 or 2.0, then once the design guidelines are set, established in the community, that would kind of be SPRAB 3.0. Is that?
Well, I mean, I think, the way SPRAB is, there's different, some people say SPRAB's been around for 50 years, some people say 20 years, but however long it's been around, it's been operating with no design guidelines. And I think, site plan development review, you don't necessarily have to have a strict coded design guideline. It's just a really good idea to have them. So I think this new entity could start working on development review while we're developing design guidelines. I don't think one has to wait for the other. As a matter of fact, this new entity could be part of the effort to write the new design guidelines, which would be wonderful, because then you'd have buy-in, right away.
And I said that was my last question, but I actually lied. So one more question, which is in the interim now between today and when SPRAB 2.0 comes online, do you see, I know that we have competent professionals such as you, Justin, others, et cetera. If we don't have the SPRAB reviews, how do some of those issues get handled in between now and when we have SPRAB 2.0?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be quite the same, but I would point out that anyone who's read SPRAB's reports, you'll notice that a lot of points that are brought up by other boards and commissions and staff are repeated in SPRAB reports. You know, there's always a heavy emphasis on some of the comments from, for instance, the Environmental Commission. So I think that's where some of the observations about redundancy have come from, because a lot of times you'll hear something in the report from the Princeton Environmental Commission that's almost word for word some of the comments that are at SPRAB. So I think we're not losing everything in terms of review. We'll still have those boards, you know, Shade Tree Commission, our own landscape architect. We have our engineers still looking at all the projects. Me, you know, from the planning perspective, and the rest of the land use team. And if it's just, I don't think it's going to be a tremendous amount of time when we're out this new site plan review entity. I think we can definitely handle it. And we'll still have a lot of input from the community on these volunteer boards and commissions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you for your comments and your work.
All right, I'll get to Michelle and David in just a second, but I know Trishka put her hand up and I just want to make sure if there's a legal point we need to have inserted that we get to it, we don't miss it. Trishka.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just one thing on the timing of having SPRAB 2.0 or 5.0 or whatever you want to call it, and then some actual design standards and criteria. I think they really need to go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not that you can't have SPRAB without design criteria. You can't have a SPRAB-like entity performing a design review without criteria. So it might be able to do other things, but it can only review applications and make recommendations based on factors that are set forth in the development regulations, including design criteria. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on that.
Trishka, could I just follow up then? That's even more reason why SPRAB shouldn't be continuing in its current state, because it's not working with design guidelines. Is that correct?
That would be my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Michelle and then David.
So, I have the pleasure to work very closely with David and Mia on the redevelopment subcommittee. And I defer to both of them, and especially to David in design guidelines and such. But I have to say, as much as I value your opinion, when I hear from the planning board referral, from our staff unanimously, and from our attorney, that we need to go in a different direction. And, I know sometimes we work really closely with people and it's hard to move away from that. But I really see that the new direction that the planning board is taking and what staff is recommending and our attorney is the right way to go. So with that, I just wanted to express, I know my admiration for what you do for our committee and our town, but I think in this case, we need to take this on board. Thanks.
Okay, David.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Trishka a follow-up question, because it has been always my understanding that if we wanted to have design review that is binding, that we need the objective codified standards, but that if it's advisory, that's not required. And I'm just wondering if you can comment on that, Trishka.
I can. There's a 1978 decision where the court struck down an ordinance that basically there was a very similar entity to SPRAB that was solely advisory. Recommendations were not binding. The court struck down the ordinance and said that applications did not have to go before that body. In that case, there were design standards, but they were insufficiently objective. They were so vague that they could be applied any old which way. court invalidated the whole thing.
Okay.
Any other council comments or questions at this point? Because I would love to get to the public.
Yeah, if I can just make one quick follow-up comment is that at the planning board last Thursday, I did ask a question of Jerry Muller about developing such design standards and whether that would be an appropriate task for a design review committee, a SPRAB-like committee, and he felt that it would. Obviously, to be codified, it would have to come back to council, but you know, as an alternative to going through the entire master plan update, or maybe not as an alternative, but as a precursor to going through the master plan update, which I agree with Michael, will take quite a while to develop a new element of the master plan for urban design guidelines. And even once we have the master plan, it will take additional time to codify it because the master plan is not binding, you know, isn't a codification, it's just direction, if you will. So I think we really are looking at a very long hiatus of having any kind of design review if we wait for the master plan overhaul. And I think we should be considering ways to try and come up with some design guidelines which could help bridge from now until the master plan overhaul is done.
Okay, thank you. All right, Adam, we're going to go to the public. So could you bring in the first person that had their hand up, please? And again, for everybody, as you come in, it's just important. So for the minutes, if you say your name and address, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, bringing over Louisa.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Louisa Clayton. I live at Mount Lucas Road, and I'm the chair of the Site Plan Review Advisory Board. SPRAB was shocked to hear of this ordinance only 24 hours before it was introduced. As stated many times at the planning board meeting on Thursday, we provide a valuable service to the planning board and to the community. I endorse the rethinking of preliminary site plan review. It should happen earlier in the design process, like HPC concept review, and meetings could occur during the working day. Also, the minor legal conflict should be remedied. But SPRAB should not be disbanded before a new review body is in place. SPRAB provides critical cross-disciplinary and collaborative input that is based upon the checklist of items in the municipal code. These include ecological considerations, landscape, relation of proposed structure to the environment, surface water drainage, driveway connections to the public street, pedestrian safety, and more. We are a group of citizen experts, not only in our fields of design, but as residents of this town. We know how an idling trash truck will negatively affect the residents of North Tulane Street as the trash collector goes inside the building to fetch and return the bins. We know how the south entrance to the shopping center is dangerous to navigate late on a Friday night. This local knowledge is critically important to the evaluation of how a development will affect a neighborhood. SPRAB also provides a noticed public forum for residents to hear detailed review of development projects in advance of the single hearing before the planning board. Staff meetings are not open to the public, and those conversations with developers happen behind closed doors. Applicants consistently make real changes to their projects based upon our recommendations. Avalon Bay changed the vehicular traffic patterns to remove truck traffic from the southern portion of the site, making the area safer for pedestrians, bikers, and children going to and from the ball fields at Grover Park. The developer of the houses on Bayard Lane made a point to thank us for our positive comments and to let us know how much he learned from our discussion. It may be too late for him to decrease the impervious coverage on the lot with smaller driveways and to move the entrance of the common drive to save the stand of mature trees along Bayard Lane, but he will anticipate these issues for the next project. The original plans for PFARs showed the building closer to Mount Lucas Road. SPRAB recommended that the building be shifted so that there be room for a wider sidewalk and a grass buffer. Now pedestrians walking to and from school in town have a safer path to navigate that busy section of Mount Lucas Road. These are meaningful ideas that would not be recommended by staff, as they are beyond the scope of compliance with the MLUL and town requirements. As development explodes in Princeton with the new overlays for affordable housing and redevelopment, we need more eyes on these projects, not fewer. Development projects are complicated and include a lot of information. They impact not only their own sites, but entire neighborhoods. Careful and considered review is important. Once these projects are built, it is difficult and expensive to remove them. Once these projects exist, they become precedent for future development projects. It is worth taking the time and using local volunteer experts who know and love this town to make sure that every project is as well planned as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. Adam, can we bring in the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over JZA.
Hello, it's Joshua Zinder. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, I'm Joshua Zinder. I live on Moore Street. I run an architectural firm on Witherspoon Street. I'm the immediate past president of the New Jersey AIA, and I'm a former member of SPRAB for, I believe I was on that committee for 5 years. Planning board members are not permitted in New Jersey to be design professionals, architects, engineers, and planners or similar that work in town. SPRAB was created to avoid this conflict and place the professionals on a separate but supporting advisory board. SPRAB is intended to be an advisory committee of professionals. When I was on it, I was told numerous times that I could not present to any board in town or submit projects for permit while I served. This was supported despite my protestation by legal counsel at the time. The intent was to prevent a conflict of interest where one day you're advising the board, the next you are presenting your project as a professional. There was a time when there were many architects and professionals that did not practice in town, and so filling the board was not an issue. That no longer seems to be the case. In recent years, there have been instances where there were potential conflicts that arose from this committee. For example, members of SPRAB have competed for projects that we have presented to SPRAB at a later date. A SPRAB member has also presented to the Planning and Zoning Board when on another day they were writing the reports and advising these boards. Despite their name, Site Plan Review Advisory Board, they do have the ability to approve minor site plans. I was a part of a number of these minor site plan approvals, thus bypassing the planning board. This action is outside of the MLUL and opens this committee, the planning board, and Princeton to lawsuits if these projects are not approved. This is not to say that an advisory board of professionals does not have its benefits, but SPRAB often goes outside of its purview, commenting on many aspects that are not part of the site plan, including interior circulation, code compliance, and many other areas. It is unusual and more cumbersome than is needed. A more efficient process would be welcome. It does not do what it is supposed to do. We need to be more compliant and accept our planning and zoning staff that they are talented and thorough. I may not always agree with them, but they are consistent and fair, which is more than many other communities. We should trust their ability to review and present projects to our planning and zoning boards. After all, that is why we hire them. Please trust our staff. SPRAB exercises authority that it does not legally have. Suggested alternatives such as concept review board. This process is not the answer. It makes for a bifurcated and more burdensome process and more costly and harder for projects to move forward. I certainly sat on at least 3 projects that I can recall on SPRAB that had concept reviews, and those projects spent years going through the rest of their approvals as a result. An architectural review board is a possible option. It exists in other municipalities and is described by the MLUL. They are only advisory. They do not approve projects. The members are typically selected by the planning board, and they are restricted, and they restrict professionals from working in their communities and to compete for projects in their town. The mayor can establish an advisory board. They do not approve projects and would have specific guidelines for the review. They would have to stay within the bounds that are established. They would have to comply with all aspects of the MLUL. SPRAB is not the same as HPC, as was mentioned at the planning board the other night. HPC has a specific task related to our historic districts. HPC has standards. What they need are guidelines or design criteria for the different districts, which is different. SPRAB guidelines do not mean that we do not need HPC guidelines. SPRAB is not needed. There are typically early conversations with staff that help guide the process. The level of completion of documentation for board review is a product of the requirements we have in town as part of the requirements for submission. I would suggest that eliminating SPRAB is the right move. Bring us into legal compliance. Council should then work with staff to carefully craft an advisory committee that works within the law, helps guide the process with clear guidelines and standards that aid our staff in review and does not place further burden upon them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please? Hi, Barbara.
Hi there.
Hi, if you could state your name and address and then make your comments, please.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council of Princeton. My name is Barbara Vadney, and I'm a resident of Princeton, living on Wiggins Street. I'm the chair of the Princeton Flood and Stormwater Commission. This commission conducts studies and makes recommendations to the mayor and council concerning flooding and stormwater management issues. Last January, council asked the Flood Commission to attend SPRAB meetings to participate on this advisory board, and I have been doing so since the start of 2021. I bring a perspective on stormwater issues to SPRAB, and I report back to the Flood Commission on potential development projects that may impact flooding potential in town. From what I can see, SPRAB has been effective with its review and thoughtful feedback on development applications. It provides the perspective of local residents who also happen to be skilled professionals such as architects and engineers. It provides a type of review that is advisory only, but that goes beyond pure code compliance to quality of life issues that will be important to those who live in Princeton and who will have to live with the built environment for years to come. In my opinion, the decision to disband SPRAB is being made too quickly, as there is no other body in place now to replace the hundreds of hours of annual review time made by its local resident members. I understand that a subcommittee of the planning board may be formed to act as SPRAB, and I would like to know if the subcommittee can be established and operating before SPRAB is disbanded. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Adam, can we bring in the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Joe.
Joe, could you unmute yourself?
Oh, sorry, it's me, Joe Small. I just want to make 4 quick points. I don't think this is necessarily a legal or technical issue, but a policy issue. First, I want to point out that the memos from council and from the staff quote a paragraph and fail to quote. It says except for, and then following except for, there are 16 specific subsections which say what SPRAB can do and what criteria are. They may not be as specific as these people think they ought to be, but there are criteria there that can be judged. So I think that's point 1. Point 2 is timing. We've seen what's happened with the ADUs, and everybody's working to fix that. We had a question this evening on what's happening with Franklin Avenue, and that's not moving forward. If you abolish SPRAB tonight, no matter how good the intentions of the members of the council and the planning board and the planning board staff are to put something in place right away, we know the history of what happens, and it will be a long time. Third, if there are things that SPRAB shouldn't be doing as it's now constituted, they can simply be waived up to the planning board, and we don't need to involve SPRAB. To the extent that there are members of SPRAB who have very clear conflicts of interests, both in sitting on their own projects and in sitting on the projects of competitors, they should be removed summarily. That they just don't have a right to sit on anything if they're active in this community. I think it's a very dangerous policy. If we said, oh, the ADU rules are not good, we'll just throw out the whole code. No, we're going to live with the code as we have it until we have a better one. And having SPRAB there, if we think it should be better, will provide a much greater incentive for those who want to change things to present something to substitute for SPRAB. It really is the baby in the bathwater. Keep SPRAB, work like crazy to get something new and better, remove the people who shouldn't be there, and remove from SPRAB's consideration those items that SPRAB doesn't have the right to deal with, and send them directly to the planning board. It's simple, and it revolves, Mayor Moore, Dinah Moore, indicated that she has sensed that something bad would happen with the ADU. I sense that something bad will happen if there's no SPRAB, that there will be projects in the pipeline that won't get adequate review and will rue the day we did it. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, can we have the next member of the public?
Yes, bringing over Heidi.
Yeah, hi, this is Heidi Fichtenbaum, and I live at 38 Carnahan Place. I am also very concerned that this has sort of suddenly risen, and a body that we've all relied on for many years is going to be, summarily disbanded. I do agree with Councilman Cohen that a group of people who can look at a site plan for its design is of critical importance to our town. I would agree with the last person who spoke that if there are issues that are egregious at this moment, let's address those and then work to get something in place. To go back to the analogy that Councilwoman Sachs brought up, having a car that needs so many repairs, that it's just better to get a new car. Unfortunately, if you need to get to work every day, you can't just say, okay, I'm getting rid of this car and I'll figure out how to get another one in about 6 months from now, because you still need to get to work. And what I have seen in Princeton, I'm also an architect. What I have seen in Princeton is time and time again, are site plans that come before the planning board without any sense of a site idea, right? No concept, right? No understanding of where is the building? Where is the parking? Where are the pedestrians? Where are they trying to move to and from? How could we integrate bicycles? Just 1,000 components. And this integrated overview of design is something that actually really requires being able to conceptualize things in 3 dimensions. Not everyone can do that. And so I would say that we are ill-served by getting rid of SPRAB right now, that we would be much smarter to make the modifications that are needed and then to move expeditiously forward. And I would be one that would certainly support the idea of putting this review process way ahead of where it is right now. Because the problem is that developers go out and they hire civil engineers, and they pay those engineers to do an entire design. And then they bring it to SPRAB and to planning board. And the truth is, by the time they get there with that, design, it's pretty much a complete package. And they are not inclined to go back and change very much of it because they've spent a lot of money to get it there. And so an earlier review that perhaps involved people with a historic perspective, people with engineering, architectural expertise, environmental expertise, would actually best serve our town. And I'm appalled that this would happen. And I feel that it is highly undemocratic,
Heidi.
because it is an opportunity for citizens to see a plan even before it gets to planning board. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, bringing over Ann.
Hi, I want to thank the council for giving me time to speak. My name is Ann Shosh. I live on Hun Road. I'm a member of the Environmental Commission and a liaison to SPRAB. I was struck by the variety of opinions expressed at the planning board session last Thursday night. First, that many members of that board read and depend on reports submitted by SPRAB. We heard the same was true for zoning. Second, if SPRAB were involved earlier in the approval process, they might be more effective. I think this is something that pretty much everyone on SPRAB agrees with. Third, we also heard that SPRAB was unnecessary and that staff could easily handle everything that SPRAB does. And fourth, we heard that it was not clear if it would be legal for the planning board to set up a sort of SPRAB-like subcommittee as the ordinance suggests. Certainly, setting up and serving on such a board would demand even more time from planning board members than they already put in. Thus, depending on who spoke, SPRAB was deemed to be either crucial or illegal or vital or unnecessary. What is certain is that there are a very large number of development proposals coming up, which planning, engineering, and zoning will need to review. I'd like to offer an analogy. The old Tappan Zee Bridge needed replacement. There were two options: tear the old bridge down and then hire engineers to design and build a new bridge. In the meantime, have no bridge at all. The other bridges available could handle the extra traffic. The other choice was to design and build a new bridge and then decommission the old bridge. The first option was dismissed immediately, recognizing that the other bridges couldn't handle the extra traffic. Ultimately, the old bridge was only decommissioned after the new bridge was open. So I would like to suggest that rather than eliminating SPRAB this evening, council consider a second option. Continue SPRAB until a new functional legal alternative is in place. Then, and only then, terminate SPRAB as it is currently constituted. If there are legal concerns about SPRAB in the meantime, I am certain that council will be able to deal with them. After all, SPRAB has been in operation since the late 60s, almost 50 years. With a new master plan in the works, I think the town needs the public review that is provided by SPRAB more than ever. I don't think that streamlining the process of development approval, to quote the ordinance, will benefit the town, although it may well benefit the developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Lisa.
Hi, it's Lisa Marcus Levine. I'm at 34 Linden Lane, and I have been a SPRAB member for 6 years, serving as a PAC liaison to SPRAB, and I've been vice chair for the last year. I think I will end up being redundant since there have been so many speakers, but I have written this out, so it's best for me to read. Since the proposal to abolish SPRAB was contemplated without any discussion with the planning board and SPRAB, we're not sure what future plans are being considered to create a more streamlined application process. Though at last week's planning board meeting, there was talk of a concept review committee of some sort being established. I hope such a committee does come to fruition, as SPRAB has repeatedly noted in that our input would be more likely adopted if it were received earlier in the process, ideally closer to the design development phase rather than when construction drawings are well developed, a point at which changes can be prohibitively costly. It's also an issue that we have with the PEC, that we are too late in the process. So an earlier design review would be great. And design review does matter. SPRAB has contributed to the application process with recommendations that result in a better final design being presented to the planning board. Our reviews have helped alert applicants and planning board members to issues that could be problematic. Some examples are sightlines for pedestrians, cyclists, and cars, traffic circulation, placement of HVAC units that could be unsightly or create noise for occupants and neighbors, space adjacencies, streetscapes, and views from surrounding properties. These are the finer design details that enhance a project. The renovation of the Hun School Science Center and Theater, which included modifications to the parking lot, is a great example of a project benefiting from SPRAB's review. It was a well-designed and beautiful project they presented to us. Still, the applicant was receptive to our input, took our initial recommendations, and returned with a revised design that tweaked the parking lot and made adjustments to the entrance, resulting in improved vehicular movement, stormwater management, and pedestrian circulation. At the Griggs Corner project review, SPRAB raised the issue of an unsightly trash pad enclosure that did not adequately address views from above and from the street. This is a level of detail that staff does not have time to concentrate on. SPRAB is an independent board of citizen volunteers. We live in Princeton and we know it intimately. While staff does an excellent job in reviewing applications, SPRAB has a slightly different perspective, and its members provide hours of review to applications, all adding to a project that best serves the people of Princeton. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Kip.
Kip, could you unmute yourself?
For some reason, I didn't go over. That's all right. I'm Kip Cherry. I was born and raised in Princeton, received my professional planner's license, and became a member of the AICP, American Certified Institute of Planners, in the 1980s. SPRAB has been doing project reviews for almost 50 years without legal challenge. There has been a suggestion that there is a project classification problem and maybe some other technical problem that staff and the town attorney have identified, but it would seem that solutions can easily be found. What is critical is what SPRAB is bringing to the table. SPRAB is a unique organization that has contributed to the development and character of the town for a long time. SPRAB is voluntary. The members are not paid, with a variety of expertises, including architectural, who know the town and its operation and its townscape. In a lot of ways, it is the eyes of the citizenry. The members take the time to make observations and share their observations in a discussion that is open to the public. From its observations, SPRAB develops recommendations regarding aspects of each project that are important to the citizenry and to the planning board members. These recommendations are very helpful to community members who are trying to understand what a project is all about and whether there are features of the project that should concern them. And most importantly, it gives the important perspective and well thought out suggestions to the planning board. SPRAB doesn't have meetings with the applicants that are essentially closed to the general public. That is left to paid staff. SPRAB meetings are quite different. They are not meetings with applicants, and again, they are open to the public. That is not to say that SPRAB is perfect, but SPRAB brings to the community a homegrown perspective that is very different from that of paid staff. It is very important to maintain SPRAB. It is needed more than ever as the borough and township continue to physically become one town, project by project, and as Princeton updates its master plan, which certainly will take a lot of significant time from staff. And at least several major projects are immediately in the offing that need a SPRAB review. By abolishing SPRAB, even temporarily, these reviews are lost. And finally, if there's a conflict of interest with members of SPRAB, they should be dealt with directly. If Princeton needs a stronger conflict of interest policy, which it probably does, then such an updated policy should be adopted across the board for all advisory committee members, elected officials, and staff. And just to be trite, and you've heard it before, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Kip. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina Clement. I live at 13 Vandeventer Avenue. I am not part of any committee. I've lived in Princeton for 40 years. I have lots of opinion about the current development of our town. I feel a great loss. When I moved here in 1982, it was a small town. It is not a small town anymore. I feel that SPRAG is very valuable in a checks and balance. We're moving with the university, we're moving with Princeton Future, we're moving with all these different venues. And I'm not sure the public has a check and balance. So I feel very concerned, and I don't know the legalities or the codes or all of that, but I feel SPRAG does offer something very valuable to our community. And I, as a resident, I think council should look at that as a resident standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Virginia.
Hi, my name is Virginia Kerr. I live at 124 Jefferson Road. I've lived here since 1992. I'm an attorney. I'm not a land use attorney, but because of where I live, I've unfortunately become a quasi, I'm not going to say expert, but I have some experience with the land use ordinances and processes in Princeton. And one of my most memorable experiences in the 90s was going to a meeting in the old Township Hall. It was a SPRAB meeting. It was a concept review before SPRAB, brought by a developer's attorney, and the developer's concept was to put a continuing care retirement facility in the woods north of Petronello Gardens. And the meeting was open, as SPRAB meetings are, and the room was packed, and the idea was not well received. And that was the end of that, and it saved everybody a lot of time and money. I'm not sure why the SPRAB review these days is later on in the process, because as I read the code, it's something that developers could request. They could request an earlier review. All right, having said that, I just would like to echo Kip's point that we have had SPRAB for a long time. And in fact, in 1989, there was a proposal to cut back on its powers. The arguments in favor of that proposal were similar to the ones now, that its work was redundant, that it sometimes conflicted with staff. I don't think that the proposal, I believe, died. There's a story in the January 11th, 1989 Town Topics on this for anybody who doesn't have enough to do. I mean, you can read that story. But I would agree with Joe Small and Kip and the speakers who were saying it would be really imprudent to adopt this ordinance this evening, abolishing SPRAB. I think there are three issues. The first is the legal status. Is the ordinance that governs SPRAB consistent with the municipal land use law? And quite honestly, I've looked at all of these, I just don't see the argument. The municipal land use law says that the council has an option to create a site plan review advisory committee and give it the ability to review all site plans, ALL site plans. It's that simple. Now, there are issues about the classification function and other issues. I haven't been quite able to figure out what the argument is, excuse me, but I do know that this entity has been operating for a long time and there's never been a legal challenge. I don't know what the 1978 decision is that the the attorney referred to. I would love to know the name of that case and the citation. But there is something to be said for the fact that SCRAB has been in place for decades and there's never been a lawsuit, probably because it functions as an advisory body. All right, the second point is—
Virginia?
Mark, please let me have—
No, I am. I'm just asking you to be succinct.
Well, I'm working on this very hard for you, okay? Because I figured. So the second issue is SCRAB staying in its lane? That is SCRAB doing what it is charged to do under our ordinance? And I've heard all of these accusations about, well, SCRAB just isn't doing what it should be doing. But I don't see any evidence. I mean, if this were a criminal case, I mean, where is the, where are the facts? I actually did look at recommendations SCRAB made over the 2021 on its applications. And I'm just not seeing anything that's so dreadful. As far as design is concerned, one thing I did want to note is that in 2018, when council readopted the land use ordinance, they left out C1 under section 10B 226C1 in the old townships code. There was quite a detailed provision about visual scale and pattern of building width and height, very specific sort of design criteria that was dropped in 2018. So it seems to me if there was an issue with the design, the absence of guidance, part of the problem was created by what council did in 2018 when it readopted this ordinance. So in any event, so far as I can tell, SCRAB seems to have been in its lane.
Virginia?
And the third point, and this is the last one, if there is a conflict of interest, conflicts of interest are serious and I think they should be dealt with, but I think this ordinance should not be adopted tonight. And I could go, I have some more reasons, but apparently you don't want to hear them, so I will sign off.
I'm just, Virginia, I'm not saying I don't want to hear them, but I'm just trying to be fair to everybody else that had a time limit. So I'm not.
Well, if you run out of speakers and have more time, I'll come back on.
It's very generous. Thank you. Thank you, Virginia.
You're welcome.
Okay. And Adam, sorry, could we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Next speaker is Michael.
Michael Floyd, Harris Road. There's been some interesting conversations Wednesday at the zoning board, Thursday at the planning board, this afternoon at the planning board. In fact, the zoning board discussed this ordinance for over an hour. We actually opted not to submit comments, and you can read into what as you will. But it was reassuring that it was clarified recently that SCRAB was working partially within the MLU, partially outside the MLU, but it was not 100% rogue organization relative to the MLU. It took David Cohen and Jerry Muller to clarify and convey that, at least for my understanding. SCRAB is needed, not a committee of the council as a substitute. So I am glad that if you are going to abolish it, that it must come back as a revised version of SCRAB serving the planning board. And the public wants transparency, open meetings. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Adam, can we have the next member of the public?
Yes, Mayor. Bringing over Dana.
Thank you. Sorry, let me close the door. There's piano in the background. This is Dana Molina of Laurel Road. And I don't want to speak too long because I think I support a lot of the comments made. I did just want to speak in support of SPRAB. I served on SPRAB as part of the Environmental Commission, and I could really see the value that having that number of volunteer experts in our community provides to the design and planning process. I think it's important to engage citizen involvement. I think you have incredibly talented folks interested in sharing that knowledge. I definitely do agree that there is no question we should make sure that it's not conflicting with any, there shouldn't be any conflict of interest. We need to address that, but I don't think that we serve ourselves well by disbanding SPRAB to solve those issues. It's clear that the commission can exist. It's not that in and of itself isn't the problem. There just seem to be some issues in terms of their responsibility. I also think that it would really behoove us to make sure that design comes sooner to SPRAB. And that is something that as a town, we can encourage developers to do. And that I think is really what the biggest value would be, which is that as part of this process, making sure that we're reevaluating how SPRAB is serving. And it would serve much better if people were coming sooner, not to not have not to have that step, but to have that input sooner. And I know how valuable the memos have been that SPRAB produces for both zoning and the planning board. And at both those meetings, those committees all spoke to how much value SPRAB has provided. So I just encourage you to really recognize the value it serves, not disband it, but to really evaluate how we need to improve it so that it's serving the town the best. But there's just no question to me that our staff is incredibly talented, but really benefit from that added stewardship of citizens. And it is one of the most sort of public ways that the public can hear things, but also we have really good stewardship and citizen involvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor. Bringing over Alice.
I'm Alice Arts, Hawthorne Avenue again. I'm mostly agreeing with what's been said so far by a lot of other people. I would very much agree that this is not the time to abolish SPRAB when oversight is so desperately needed. We're seeing evidence of, if things are, are going wrong all the time. If it is abolished before another oversight body is in place, we're going to be in for developers taking advantage of that absence of oversight and putting up huge monstrosities in neighborhoods that neither fit in nor should be approved by anyone. Residents and professionals with expertise need to be very watchful to defend this town against the huge, unmanageable, anti-ecological, money-grubbing disasters that developers seem to be determined to put in place if they are allowed to. Certainly, SPRAB should speak to developers early on in projects, and for sure there must not be conflicts of interest, but surely that can be fixed without throwing out our only protection.
Thank you, Alice.
You're welcome.
Okay, Adam, can we have the next member of the public, please?
Yes, bringing over Yaina.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Yana.
Okay, thank you. I served on SPRAB about 26 years ago. I was appointed by Mayor Reed when I first returned to town with my daughter, noticed at a university that the Arts Council was planning to expand in what was the former Colored Y at the corner of Green and Witherspoon Street. It had always been part of the neighborhood. However, the way in which that project developed through the sort of planning and review process is that it had been given quite a bit of dispensation with regard to the ownership being the borough's lands at the time and them being the current tenant and would become the owner. And I don't believe SPRAB had sort of the interventions that would have certainly benefited in its review early on, but instead at great expense in terms of citizen time, the neighborhood more or less had to take it on itself, where SPRAB would have been the agent to correct some things. I want to go into a little detail about that a little later, but I'm going to first say that I agree with David's points, but I agree even more with Ann Sasha's comments about good management strategies in both a business and infrastructure standpoint. I served on SPRAB for about 4 years prior to being appointed then to the planning board, in which I served about another 14 years. And I had experience in planning, design, and finance and development that brought to bear a lot of issues and a lot of projects. But when I go back to the issues of sort of neighborhoods in defense of themselves, in the absence of having a public review process that SPRAB serves in terms of at the early end, which was when we actually met. And of course, Bill Wolf was chair then. Well, he wasn't actually, I think Ron Berlin was for a time, but Bill was on the board. It was sort of a concept review kind of process to get some of the sort of the kinks out, or sort of understanding of the context of the neighborhood that you're trying to develop adjacent to or within, that many developers, whether they live here or not, seem not to have the sensitivity for. So when the Arts Council brought this design to a concept review at the planning board, it had essentially relegated the prominently African-American neighborhood to the back door of the Arts Council building, the door that's on Green Street, on which they said, well, we'll put the Paul Robeson name and bust back there. Of course, we know what eventually happened, but what we had to do in the absence of the sage advice and wisdom that SPRAB provides in the context of many different fronts, not only the environmental and pedestrian and traffic, that all integrates in and coordinates with the building design, whether it's a door or not a door, or a window or not a window. We had to have our own sessions with the Arts Council. The architect, Tom Rowe, was the principal in charge at Graves' office. First project, of course, they had done in town that wasn't a residential project. Yeah, okay.
Just asking you to.
I'm almost finished.
Thank you.
And so, and we had to do that, thankfully, with the assistance of Princeton Future, in which I sat at the time, because we couldn't afford to have an attorney go fight a process, which of course, like the Herringtown Road residents, they did. I think there are lots of ways to tweak the current SPRAB to get it back on track to being the committee and advisory role. I can believe we made recommendations to the planning board whether they might approve or disapprove on conditions based on our review. I don't think we approved or didn't approve of something as a standing, but the recommendations were of substance and would continue to help neighborhoods in the defense of themselves.
Yeah, I know.
Without the cost of legal counsel being the only means for being heard.
Thank you, Jan. Adam, can we bring in the next member of the public, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over William.
Hi, my name is William Wolf. I made a lot of comments to the planning board and I could forward them, but I think most of it has been said tonight. So I want to just say a couple things. One of the reasons that SPRAB has been very effective uniquely to this town is that this town's zoning ordinances are so out of date, badly managed, that almost every major project coming before the planning board requires variances. And this process means things need to be negotiated, moved around, and there's always room for improvement, and there is often opportunities that the applicant can take advantage of to improve the project. And that's almost unique to Princeton. And SPRAB has developed methods of working with the applicant. And it helps that SPRAB does not have enforcement power, but advisory, because they can suggest improvements to the submitted plans and have. And SPRAB can invite the applicant to show an improved version of the planning board. Many people don't realize that if SPRAB didn't invite them to bring those revisions to the planning board, they would have no choice under the law but to come to the planning board with exactly the documents as they were first submitted. This would leave the planning board no room to make any decision other than approve it as originally submitted or deny it. And that doesn't make any sense. The planning board needs to have some wiggle room, some chance of making better decisions. And SPRAB, and in its report, clarifies what those decisions might be to really improve a project. And many times, the applicant has been grateful to SPRAB for that opportunity and for their input. I agree with almost everybody that it would be much better if that happened at a concept stage rather than after the applicant had made a decision to come in with what they call a preliminary final, which means they only take one shot at the planning board and everything is developed. There's lots of ways that the functioning of site plan review could be improved. But I would submit to you that the ordinance before you is exactly the wrong thing to do. The statement of purpose at the end of this ordinance, the purpose of this ordinance is to disband Princeton's Site Plan Review Advisory Board and make resulting modifications to Princeton's site plan and zoning regulations. I would submit that that's absolutely backwards. The purpose of this ordinance ought to be to make modifications to Princeton's site plan and zoning regulations in order that the Site Plan Review Advisory Board could function more properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Adam, do we have another member of the public that hasn't spoken already on this topic?
Yes, Mayor, I believe Dale hasn't spoken.
Right, okay, thank you, yes.
All right.
Hello, this is Dale Mead, Oakland Road. I was at the zoning board meeting on Wednesday night, and I listened to them discuss the advantages they saw for this advisory board, and they were struggling with the handcuffs that were placed on them by the Open Meeting Act. They weren't able to fully discuss things in that first meeting with short notice, and weren't able to get together at a meeting and with a quorum prior to this meeting. So they were stuck. And so the first thing is, I would say, you should not be approving a change to a significant ordinance, at the very next meeting after it's introduced. There just isn't enough time for the people who are affected by this to discuss it. And that's particularly true now in this time of COVID. You may be adept at Zoom communications, et cetera, and so on. But believe me, many people, most, are not. And I was surprised at how many people on my neighborhood were just devoid totally of Zoom and even internet connectivity. So please take that into account. And I think there should be a general policy that you have, unless it's an extreme emergency that demands immediate action, not to approve a significant change to an ordinance at the very next meeting. That's kind of point one. Point two is, I heard a lot of suggestions tonight, which were minor to me, tweaks that could be done to address the criticisms of the people who thought this advisory board was they're out of bounds with this authority or was ineffective. There were many things that could be done with the snap of a finger, including the conflict of interest issue. That should be fixed in a matter of hours, period. There's another aspect of this that I think is really important, and that is mentioned by several speakers. There's going to be extreme pressure on the regulatory bodies in the Princeton municipal government to respond to all of the projects that you have kind of on the books and on the way, having to do with affordable housing, et cetera, and so on. And you're going to need everything there to help review these and make sure no mistakes happen. And we don't need another mistake that I look at every morning when I get up now, this monster across the street. That should not have happened. And the COVID restrictions on communications somehow prevented any neighbor from finding out about this project until they were out there with the bulldozers.
Yeah.
And that's not the way to run the show. So I would urge you, do not approve this tonight. Continue to discuss if you must. But I think it's possible to fix this as was suggested by David and many others along the way very quickly, so we can have a smooth transition to whatever you have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. All right, we also had 3 letters, 3 emails that came in before the meeting, before the deadline. So we're going to read those now. I think Eve's going to read one, then Leighton's going to read the next one, and I think I got the third one. So I'm just bringing this on Eve and Leighton now. So let's give them a minute to find those. But
I found it.
Oh, great.
I'll start. Well, mine is, first one is from Linda Headley, 25 Oakland Street. I understand that council will consider an ordinance disbanding Princeton SPRAB on January 24th, 2022. SPRAB serves a vital function, allowing the community to consider and comment on site plans. It was created as part of a greater movement to ensure public participation in government decision and allow for orderly conflict resolution without having to resort to litigation. To borrow my husband's language, disbanding SPRAB is nothing short of nefarious. It would permit council to make unilateral decisions based solely on information provided by its employees without allowing those most affected by the decisions to have a voice or giving them advance notice of major changes proposed for the built environment. I am frankly ashamed that council is considering such a move. It reeks of elitism and entitlement, as if having a professional staff negates the need to solicit public opinion, provide advance notice, or proceed in a democratic manner. That is not the Princeton way or the New Jersey way. I strongly urge you to reject this authoritarian and undemocratic ordinance and continue the system that has been successful for decades.
Thank you, Eve. Leighton?
The next letter is from Mr. Richard Makovsky, 25 Oakland Street, who writes, to the Princeton Mayor and Town Council, to abolish the SPRAB because it is duplicative and sometimes conflicting is a justification based on erroneous logic and undemocratic principles. Being duplicative and sometimes conflicting are the strengths of this model, not its weakness, as follows. One entity's review is from the perspective of the town, and the other entity's review is from the perspective of the public. To abolish the SPRAB is to abolish the perspective of the public. Please consider the nefarious implications of such an act in an otherwise participatory democracy. I implore the mayor and the town council to not abolish the SPRAB.
Thank you. The next one is from Julie Furman, 234 Clover Lane. She addressed it to the planning board, but I wish to comment that in my opinion, that SPRAB should be kept as part of the longstanding eyes and ears of the general community as an added support for the planning board of Princeton. As we have navigated the changes in our community, SPRAB has been a useful tool that has acted as a safe layer of oversight. I advocate maintaining SPRAB as a needed and substantial benefit to our community. I have kept this brief, keeping in mind the input you must be receiving. Thank you for your attention. Okay. Any follow-up questions, comments by the council? Leticia?
Yes, so I want to again state that I truly value and respect recommendations from our staff, and I understand them. And I also value and trust the advice from our legal counsel. But I still am not sure I understand the urgency of abolishing this body before having something else in place, and why, what the process would be, and why we can't address the issues and concerns, including legal concerns, as part of that process. So that's what, I'm trying to understand that. And I don't know if Michael, you wanted to respond to that?
Council President, thank you. I will, because I think I speak for my colleagues when I say that it's a little disheartening to hear comments that sound like we're not working for the public, so the public needs to have SPRAB. I mean, SPRAB has been added value, but we work every day for the public. I mean, let me give you a very recent example that you're all aware of. With the university's new Engineering and Environmental Sciences Center, there was a threat to move the Court Club across Prospect Avenue, and to do so, they were going to knock down 3 historic houses. Well, long story short, because of staff perspective, staff involvement, staff mediation, and staff leadership, we changed that outcome. And everyone in this town, including, I think it was 2,000 people who had signed a petition not wanting those historic buildings to be destroyed, was thrilled with the outcome. And we're even going to have a historic district on Prospect Avenue. The university years ago wasn't in favor of it. Now they are. They're a wonderful partner with the community. That's a wonderful outcome. And staff was right in the middle of that. So I don't understand people saying things like staff isn't working every day, every hour of every day to make this community better. And some of us have lived in Princeton. I lived in Princeton. I spend more time working in Princeton than where I live. So I don't really understand that point either. We all love Princeton. So we're very dedicated to making this town the best it can be. And I just think, what's interesting about that example I just stated, 91 Prospect Avenue, which was the university's proposal to move the Court Club and knock down some historic buildings, is that SPRAB had zero comment on it when it came before them. They did not say anything about preserving those buildings or not moving the building, Court Club. They talked about impervious coverage and pavers and things like that. And it was a real missed opportunity. And thank goodness the Historic Preservation Commission waved the flag and said, wait a minute, this isn't good enough for Princeton. We need to do something better. Let's all huddle and get together and talk about a better outcome. And the university deserves so much credit for being a partner. And then the planning board picked up the ball and ran with it. Let's be real. I mean, that's a recent example. So just wanted to give you that perspective because staff is feeling a little misunderstood here, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. And again, really, truly appreciate and value all that you do for Princeton.
And it's not just me. I mean, the unbelievable work of the engineering department, of our zoning officer. Derek must have the hardest job in New Jersey, in my humble opinion. It's a team effort. And I wish the people of Princeton, I hope they believe that we're in their corner fighting for them every day, because that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry, Eve, do you want to go? I just wanted to add on to what Michael had to say.
Go ahead.
And perhaps the public doesn't understand this, but every site plan application, every subdivision that comes through, gets an application that comes in, is reviewed by the planning department. It's reviewed by the zoning officer. It's reviewed by me in the role of land use engineer. It's reviewed by our stormwater management expert. We have a stormwater management consultant who reviews it for stormwater management. We have a landscape architect who reviews it for landscaping. We have a traffic consultant who reviews it for traffic impacts. The Princeton Environmental Commission reviews site plans. The Shade Tree Commission reviews site plans. And all of this is done and reports are prepared so that the planning board has a full picture of what they're looking at. And then the planning board has a public hearing at which the public is able to speak. Following an approval, many times there's another committee that does a review, and that's the landscape committee, to make sure that the landscaping and the visual impact of the project is addressed in accordance with the results of the public hearing at the planning board. I just want the public to understand that there are a number of different eyes looking at every application that comes in every day. So just reiterating what Michael had to say, that we are working every day on behalf of Princeton to make sure that development moves forward in a legal and comprehensive and aesthetically pleasing way. Thank you.
Thank you for providing those details, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Eve was next, and then Mia.
I'd rather follow Mia if you don't mind, Mia. I saw that you wanted to speak before me.
Mia, you're mute.
So that really puts the pressure on Eve. I just wanted to answer Leticia's question, because that was my question as well. And we spent several hours this afternoon at the planning board discussing it. And we went through it, I went into that meeting thinking, okay, let's just make all of these changes, the legal changes, the conflict of interest changes, so on and so forth. And what we end up with is a committee, which is what David called a depopulation approach. And so that you have basically a committee that's not populated, but it's just exists sort of as a stub. And so we discussed the implications of having that committee just exist as a stub. So when you're talking, it's not like if we didn't pass this resolution, we would continue SPRAB on as it is now. There are actions that we need to take, legal actions and actions related to the personnel that would render it not functional right now. And what the attorneys basically said is that it is problematic for us to continue to have this stub entity, which is depopulated and has but is still part of our ordinances, and that creates a complicated situation that is not helpful for staff and not helpful for the review process, and actually creates more work and gets in the way of us moving towards what everybody tonight has said that they want to have. And what is reassuring tonight is to hear that basically we all do want the same thing, which is to have people from the community who understand the community at an earlier, and I'm just rehashing, at an earlier part of the stage, really correct for, as Bill Wolf said, our zoning deficiencies, which I do hope, and I agree with him that at some point we will get to that, who know the community well enough to connect the dots and say, well, on that corner, this is going on, and we suggest this, and you could maybe apply for that. We all want that. The question is how we can get there the fastest. And that to your question of the urgency is we want to be able to get there. And based on the discussion where we analyzed the answer to tried to get to the root of, your question, Leticia, in the planning board hearing, and that's why the planning board voted unanimously to abolish, not because they don't want to have all these wonderful things that we've talked about tonight, but because they believe that that is the fastest path, and that by keeping this entity intact with all of the legal complications on the books and having to address that is a longer route than doing what we're doing tonight. And I was convinced at that hearing, as were all the other planning board members at that hearing, that this is the fastest way. And I will just say that I came into that meeting thinking, all right, well, maybe, I'm willing, if we can keep SPRAB intact in some way, to put off the master plan, to put off all these other important things, because to make sure that we can still have the staff time. We went through all the different options, and we ended up with unanimously voting the planning board to support this resolution, because we did feel it was the fastest way to get the things we want. I just want to say one more thing to all the people who said, well, this is, what's going to happen when all of the affordable housing comes through through the town in the next year. Guess what? All of the affordable housing already went through SPRAB in the last few years. We have only 2 sites left, one of which is a redevelopment site. And for those who are skeptical about redevelopment, one of the nice things about redevelopment is that that is a land use opportunity where you are permitted legally to build in specific design criteria as part of the redevelopment process. The other site that we have that has to go before is up this year is the Franklin site, which is maybe redevelopment or may not, but Joe, just so you know, it's not being held up for anything to do with SPRAB. It's being held up for logistical issues that have nothing to do really even with the municipality. But the rest of our affordable housing and all of that stuff that everyone keeps saying, oh my God, it's gonna come before the town, it's already gone through the land use process and they've all appeared before SPRAB. So let me say that.
Thank you, Mia. Eve, do you want to go now?
That's a hard act to follow because Mia knows all of this much more intimately than I do. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to hear from her, as we heard earlier from David. And, as our 2 representatives from council on the planning board, I really appreciate their input. And it's complicated when they are in disagreement with each other. I appreciate everything that we've heard from members of the public, those who've been on SPRAB or other entities and served and have seen that this has been a process that has added value. I also hear from some people that there's a difficult reaction to changes that are coming. Princeton is not the same town that it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. You don't want to not change. That's death. So the fact that Princeton has remained a vibrant community that people want to be part of, and as we'll hear a little bit later when we talk about the special improvement district, having a vital downtown, having a thriving community, having people who live in affordable housing, which will be building over the next few years, join our community, will all enhance, I think, our community and make it more of what it should be. But there's losses in that too. Change can be difficult. I just want to say, and a couple of people mentioned that they woke up one morning to bulldozers next to them, and just want to remind people that if you're not applying, if the owner of a property, developer of a property is not applying for a variance, there is no requirement in New Jersey land use law to notify the neighbors. That's really hard, but there's nothing we can do about that if somebody is within the rights that they have currently have on their property due to current zoning. So that unfortunately is something we will never be able to address unless state law changes. Okay, so to come down to it, and again, many of the people who spoke are people I respect and admire, and have close relationships with. But ultimately, I just keep coming back to the fact that our attorneys, the entire planning board, and our staff are in agreement on this. And our staff, as Michael and Jim eloquently said, they are in the trenches day after day after day. They don't meet once a month or twice a month to talk about these issues. They're in those trenches day after day. And I know they encourage people to come in for preliminary reviews so that issues can be addressed as soon as possible. I absolutely feel that, a design review, once design guidelines can be designed, would enhance, the process, and that the planning board, as they requested in their unanimous agreement to disband SPRAB as it's currently constituted and to work towards a replacement institution or body of some kind. I believe that their opinion and the opinion of our staff needs to be heeded and respected. And so my vote will be to say yes to the current ordinance and to vote to disband SPRAB and to ask the planning board to establish an institution in its place and to work towards design guidelines for the future.
Thank you, Eve. Michelle.
Just briefly to say that I do appreciate what everyone said on the public comments that were against disbanding SPRAB. And I just want to say we want to get to the same place. It's just the methodology. And I do believe I have great faith in our staff and our legal counsel. And I know that in the planning board, and I know that we'll get there. And I think we all want the same thing. I hope everyone understands why I am going to vote to disband SPRAB. Thank you.
Any other council comments or questions before we do a roll call vote? All right, seeing none. Dolores, can we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Ms. Perron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
No.
Ms. Frago,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Leighton, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next public hearing is on ordinance 2022-02, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton establishing permit parking in the Westminster parking yard and amending chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Is there a motion? Michelle has the motion. Is there a second? Leticia has the second. Thank you. Council questions, comments? All right, seeing none. Public, anyone from the public that wishes to ask a question or make a comment on this ordinance? All right.
No hands, Mayor.
No hands. Thank you, Adam. Okay, in that case, Dolores, can we have a roll call vote on this also?
Ms. Perron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. All right, now we have a number of ordinance introductions. The first one is ordinance 2022-03, an ordinance creating a special improvement district within the municipality of Princeton and designating a district management corporation. Public hearing February 28th, 2022. Is there a motion? Michelle?
But just before that, Mayor, I just need the record to reflect that I am recusing myself on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle has the motion. Is there a second on the motion? Leighton has the second. Any
I'd like,
explanatory brief comments? Michelle?
thanks. Actually, I'm making a motion with 3 amendments to them, to the ordinance. One is to add an additional addendum. There were 5 properties that were left off, which Justin late in the day found. So they have been added and they will be added to the record. And they will also be properly noticed. The second I'd like to read, and that is in section 5, under number 14, we'd like to add the wording under recruit new businesses to fill vacancies in and to balance the business mix of the SID with the goal of having a balanced representation of minority and women-owned businesses. And of course, I'll send this in. And then the third amendment would be to remove number 18 under review of all applications. And those 2 paragraphs we'd like to remove. And that was under advice also of counsel. And Frank Regan is our counsel on that. And then I have some remarks to read, but Eve, if you have a question, if you want to go ahead before.
I'm sorry.
I just want to caution everybody, right? Because this is only an introduction, so we have to be careful where we go with this, right? Because our detailed conversation has to be in the public hearing. So sorry, Eve, didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
it's a question of fact. Michelle, you sent us an email in the day that there was an addition to the ordinance in terms of the termination.
Yes.
Clause,
Yes.
and I didn't hear you mention that, so I just wanted to.
Thank you. Yes, because I did get that uploaded in time to be replaced, but I will read that. There's a sunset clause, as they refer to that, and that was added late in the day on Friday. And I apologize for these changes, but when you deal with steering committee and other people and all, we have different, this was something that I didn't realize needed to be in the ordinance. So we've added section 11 termination, and I'll read that. The SID shall continue in existence for 5 years from the effective date of this ordinance, after which it shall automatically terminate, and the municipality shall acquire title to the assets and assume the liabilities of the DMC, unless the municipality extends the term of the SID by an amendment of this ordinance in accordance with applicable law and notice to all property owners in the SID, and then subject to a special assessment. So that was determined that the steering committee wanted to add that because they want to have that checks and balance and to make sure that there is, so I don't know if I should go into the explanation of that, but that was added. So, okay. And then I have some remarks if I can read them.
Again, as long as you don't go into the substance or try and just be careful where you go.
Okay, thanks, Mark. You're helpful with this. It's hard to balance between an introduction. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background. So stop me if I stray. So the ordinance introduction is the product of over 1.5 years of work that the steering committee did with our consultant. The genesis of the process was that the Economic Development Committee recommended to move forward with the economic revitalization study. Mayor and council held several meetings with a diverse array of property and business owners to get their feedback on what measures needed to be taken to help the businesses. From these meetings and discussions, Mayor and council appointed a steering committee of 18 members that was comprised of a diverse mix of property and business owners, nonprofits, and 1 resident. The steering committee is made up of many business leaders in our community that volunteer their time, from the Princeton Merchants Association, Economic Development Committee, Chamber of Commerce, and so on. These are leaders who work tirelessly over the years to help our business community through promotions, creating and running communication forums to educate on important topics, as well as network and build community among the business owners. So the work of the steering committee undertook included weekly meetings, presentation preparation, and research to consider all the various options, and avenues to build a sustainable funding source for activities which are needed to nurture and grow our commercial districts. The steering committee held 2 stakeholder meetings where they invited, through a public notice, all property owners to attend. That was a mailed notice. They finalized their recommendations in a report to council, which was presented in last December, which was the culmination of that work. In that report, they recommended the creation of the Special Improvement District. I might be straying a little bit here in my notes.
I think you're at a great.
Am I okay so far? Is that, yeah?
I think you're,
That's basically, I just, yeah.
Yeah,
just
you go
leave
much
it
further.
at-
I think you're going beyond just giving people information.
Okay. So then the last bit of information, I'll skip the rest. I think that's going to be going past my purview here. The last thing I just want to mention is that all the properties that are listed will be noticed with a mailing piece, and the ordinance will be sent to them within the next week or so. And the public hearing will be held on February 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, Dolores, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-04. An ordinance by the municipality of Princeton establishing a restricted parking zone for handicap parking at 51 Hawthorne Avenue and amending Chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, public hearing, February 14, 2022. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Eve, can I give you the second? Deanna?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It came to our attention that there is a blank on the ordinance for the fee that would be assessed for the permit placard. And I'm recommending that at this time it would be a $0 fee. And if our administrative costs raise where we would need to input a fee, we would come back to council for that.
Thank you. Okay, could we do a roll call vote on this also?
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
I'm going to abstain.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On the next ordinance, Eve is going to recuse herself. And
Thank you for the reminder. I'll just say, as an employee of the watershed, I've been, it's been recommended that I recuse on issues relating to stormwater regulations and ordinances.
thank you for explaining that, Eve. Ordinance 2022-05, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning stormwater management regulation for large and small projects and amending Chapter 10B of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Public hearing, February 14, 2022. Is there a motion? David, thank you. Is there a second? Leighton, thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay. When Eve bounces back in. There we go. Okay. Ordinance 2022-06, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton removing a handicap parking space from Chestnut Street and amending Chapter 11 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Public hearing, February 14, 2022. Is, Okay, Eve has the motion. Thank you. Is there a second? Michelle, thank you. Deanna or Jim or Trishka, I just want to make sure, if it's Chestnut Street, why would we be amending the township code and not the borough code?
For some reason, when it was enacted, I think back in 2017, it was put into the township code rather than the borough code.
Okay, interesting, because Chestnut Street is in the former borough, but fine.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Whatever.
Mark,
Okay.
that was a good catch. It went right by me.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next one is ordinance 2022-07. And I'm not, I saw some email correspondence that there was concern that this had not been fully vetted between the staff and our attorney, and this might not, is this supposed to be on the agenda for tonight? Do we know?
Which one is this?
This is,
Deanna, do you have something in regards to this?
It was my understanding that it would stay on the agenda. This is the pedestrian and bike advisory composition.
okay, well,
I think that you worked it out, right? Yeah, I think-
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
okay. I would just recommend for the future, if people raise a concern during the day, that they should let all of us know that it's been handled or not prior to the meeting. That would be very nice. Just saying. Okay, let me read it. Ordinance 2022-07. An ordinance by the municipality of Princeton modifying the composition of the liaisons to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Public hearing, February 14th, 2022. Is there a motion? Okay, Michelle has the motion, Leighton has the second. Can we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
I think I'm going to abstain on this one.
okay. Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, we have a number of resolutions. 22-44, resolution approving settlement agreement with Integrated Construction and Utilities of New Jersey LLC and the Ohio Casualty Insurance Company in the matter captioned Integrated Construction and Utilities of New Jersey LLC versus Municipality of Princeton, docket number MER-L-850-21, and rescinding termination for cause and confirming termination for convenience for the project known as the improvements to Linden Lane and Spruce Street. Is there a motion on this resolution? David, and Eve has the second. Any council questions or comments on the resolution? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. 22-45, resolution authorizing a supplement agreement with T&M Associates in the not to exceed amount of $90,184 for Witherspoon Street Phase 1 design services, resulting in a final cost for design services of $483,684.93. Is there a motion? Leighton, thank you. Eve has the second. Council questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 22-46, resolution authorizing an agreement with T&M Associates in the not to exceed amount of $368,230 for Witherspoon Street Phase 1 Construction Administration / Construction Observation Services. Is there a motion? David and Michelle. David has the motion, Michelle has the second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 That's everybody. 22-47, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement in the not to exceed amount of $56,665 with T&M Associates for annual inspection services at the Princeton landfill, including gas and groundwater sampling and testing services and reporting to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you. Leighton's got the second. Any council questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, Mia, that was an aye.
That was an aye.
Sorry. It's hard for me to see everybody, to keep track. I missed you. My bad. 2248, a resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Dakotas, Fitzpatrick, Cole, and Giblin LLP in an amount not to exceed $35,000 for professional legal services, conflict counsel, and special projects. Is it Michelle? Thanks. Mia's got the second. Any council questions or comments? I see none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22-49, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Dakotas, Fitzpatrick, Cole, and Giblin LLP in an amount not to exceed $25,000 for professional legal services, PCTV litigation. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you. Michelle has the second. Any council questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-50, resolution awarding a contract to Precision Technology Solutions for upgrades to parking equipment upgrades at the Spring Street Garage in the not to exceed amount of $32,010. Is there, okay, Leticia and David. Leticia has the motion. David has the second. Any council? Michelle, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Was this regarding moving off the smart card technology and we had to redo the technology? I was just curious.
No, it's not related to smart cards. It allows for contactless payments such as like your Apple Pay and the tap and go type of chip payment that you can often find other places.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thanks, Deanna. Any other council questions or comments? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's everybody. 22-51, resolution amending 2021-2022 agreement with Central Jersey Waste and Recycling, Inc. and approving change order number 3, resulting in a final contract amount not to exceed $710,640.14. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you. And Leighton has the second. Any council questions or comments? Eve, go ahead.
I just want to comment a little bit on this and the following resolution that, as some of you may know, that due to COVID, many more people are home rather than going to work. And so our estimated cost for services such as trash have gone through the roof. And in addition, since companies such as Solterra, who picks up our trash, really are having a hard time keeping employees and keeping their equipment up to date. So it's a very tough situation. I want to thank Deanna for her hard work on this issue. We're looking towards a new contract in starting in 2023. And so anyway, these costs, although there's a big increase, are just an unavoidable result of COVID. So I just wanted to put a little context in that.
Thank you, Eve. Any other council questions or comments on 2251? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 2252, resolution amending 2021-2022 agreement with Central Jersey Waste and Recycling, Inc. to extend the solid and bulky waste collection, removal, and disposal services contract 1 year for 2022 and authorizing change order number 4. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you. Sir, Mia has the second. Any council questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. 22-53, resolution authorizing 2022 contract for Child Health Conference providing preventive child health services with Capital Health not to exceed amount of $40,000. Leticia, thank you. And Michelle has the second. Any council question? Leticia.
Yes, I just wanted to comment from information received from Jeff that this amount is a decrease of $10,000 for the year due to lower than the expected cost. As some of you may be aware, that 2021 was the first year that we contracted with Capital Health for this service, which provides vaccines, and the Well Baby Clinic, which actually includes individuals up to 18 years old. And that due to the new site, which is off of Witherspoon Street, that this new site has been a tremendous success and great improvement, including accessibility for members of our community who previous to this site had to go across Route 1 to the Penn Medical Center. So this is a great improvement.
Thank you. Eve, did you have a comment also, or?
I was going to say, with a little less detail and information, the same thing that Leticia said, just that this is a phenomenal development with the hospital leaving, people having to go to Princeton Medical Center on the other side of Route 1 to have a homegrown facility so near the neighborhood where so many people live and want to access this for our, well baby clinics and maternal health. Just phenomenal. I want to thank our Deputy Administrator, Jeff Grosser, for, helping to bring this to fruition, and Leticia as well.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we're almost there. 22-54, resolution authorizing professional services agreement with Linda Lee for supplemental public health nursing services not to exceed amount of $28,000. Leticia has the motion. Is there a second? Mia, thank you. Any council questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-55, a resolution adopting technology risk management standards in compliance with the New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability Joint Insurance Fund's Cyber Risk Management Plans Tier 1 requirements. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Mia, thank you. Any council questions or comments? Eve?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a little bit more information about this. It was a little jargony. Maybe Bernie or someone else could explain what 2254 and 2255.
Yeah, so they both go together. We are a member of the Mid Jersey JIF, and through that membership, we are also a member of the New Jersey MEL, which is excess liability insurance. The MEL is very active with cybersecurity and technology, and they have some protocols that we must follow Tier 1 and to successfully get through Tier 1 and then successfully get through Tier 2. Phil came on board, as you know, a couple months ago and has been working with them. They have a consultant who works with us on this, and we have completed everything we need to do. It's different kind of security aspects to our system to protect us from cyber attacks and things of that nature. So Tier 1 is kind of a lower level of things, which we've accomplished, and they're laid out here. And then in the next resolution, Tier 2, it's kind of a higher level of things that we've done. And part of then having done them is council needs to pass the resolution recognizing that they have been done. But I want to thank Phil for all his work on this project.
And Bernie, does this include staff training? Because I know a lot of cybersecurity problems come up because people don't know necessarily how they should handle risks or phishing.
Yeah,
So
there is an aspect to that, and Phil and I actually talked this morning on that, and there will be additional staff training on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Any other comments or questions on 2255? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. All right, 2256, the related one that Bernie just referenced. Resolution adopting technology risk management standards in compliance with the New Jersey Municipal Excess Liability Joint Insurance Funds Cyber Risk Management Plans Tier 2 requirements. Is there a motion? Eve, thank you. Is there Mia? Thank you. Mia has the second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
22-57, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with the Nader Group LLC in the not to exceed amount of $98,400 for the purpose of floodplain mapping of Harry's Brook from North Harrison Street to Snowden Lane. Is that David? Thank you. Is there Eve? Thank you. Is there any comments or questions? Eve?
I'm sorry. Could I just ask Deanna to just say a few words about this? Because I think, or Jim, sorry, I think this is a really, really important initiative. I'm thrilled that it's happening. So.
2 words. Harry's Brook is not mapped for flood insurance mapping purposes between North Harrison Street and Snowden Lane. When the mapping was updated in 2016, the borough was not mapped. Harry's Brook is within the borough in that area. There have been a number of developments within that watershed, within that floodplain. The floodplain is currently shown as an estimated floodplain, which makes it very difficult to determine whether or not something is being done within the floodplain or outside the floodplain. With this mapping, we will be able to determine exactly where the limits of the flood, the 100-year flood are, so that we can better manage our development in the future. We can't go back in the past. Things that have been done, but hopefully we will have an ability to limit the development within the floodplain once we get this mapping completed.
Yeah, thank you. I thought this was especially important to highlight because we got a letter from a number of concerned residents in the last few days about prioritizing stormwater issues. And this is one of the ways in which the municipality is doing that. So thank you.
Thanks, Eve. Thanks, Jim. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, it's everybody. 22-58, resolution authorizing a 1-year extension of a contract with Eastern Armored Services, Inc. in the not to exceed amount of $100,224 for 2022 armored car services contract. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Mia, thank you. Council questions or comments?
Yeah, I just, is this something where we can down the road see if we can bring this down? I mean, the cost of paying cash or taking cash seems awfully high. I know that we have the coin in the meters, so I'm just wondering. I mean, it seems like a lot of money to spend.
This is our last year where we can do an extension on the contract, so we will take that up. I know that the parking department does have some ideas, at least from parking revenue perspective, of how we might be able to make some changes. So we'll definitely look at that as we put together the next bid specification.
Thank you, Deanna.
Okay. Any other council questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next up is the consent agenda, just to make sure that no one has any item that they feel needs to be pulled off the consent agenda. Okay, would someone move the consent agenda? Leticia, thank you. David has the second. Thank you. All in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 All right, that's everybody. Okay, it's time to, David, thank you. David moves to adjourn. Michelle seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 A good night to everyone. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Night,
Good night.
everyone.
Thanks.